Shaughan, let us turn our attention to look at League One. This year's division looks like it's going to be loads of fun. There are some big name full-time clubs who shouldn't really be at this level. Some smaller full-time clubs who are doing their best to keep their heads above water. There's teams looking for redemption after a difficult few seasons. Some Wheel-Kent part-time teams, plastic upstarts, and everything else in between. I think this is a really difficult division to call. Can you get your head around what you're about to witness?
I think there is a piping hot favourite who I would be astonished if they didn't win the league, albeit I'm fairly certain I said they were going to win the championship last time around.
I think a few people said that 12 months ago.
It feels like there's an unusually high amount of full-time teams in the league this time around. Is there 5 maybe?
I think so,
Is that right? And I think generally you normally expect those full-time teams to gravitate towards the upper echelons of the division. And I would imagine a few of them will. But I think it's really open, and I think there's some really, really strong part-time teams now, never mind when the transfer window closes in September. So I do think there might be a couple of full-time teams that rather than just you naturally expect them to finish top 4. I don't know if I feel that way this time around, but I do think it's really open.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I think this is really difficult to call. As you say, there's one team that are favourites, but I'm very, very cautious about what I say about them. Then beneath that, I think it's really, really difficult to call. Really difficult to call. Even at the other end of the table, I think there's a number of candidates that you can say down there, and there are teams that I think that had good seasons last season that might just get pushed down because of the quality of the teams that are in here. So it's really, really difficult to call. I think that of all the divisions, well, no, say not all the divisions, because we'll come and talk about League 2. I think League 2 is actually quite hard to call as well. But that's, I think it's going to be, the SPFL is going to be absolutely class this season. So we'll break down the teams as we tend to do in alphabetical order, one by one, and we will start with
Airdrieonians.
I was going to say the red. I set you up for the red diamond. I set you up for the red diamond. Christ. Now, in the 2024-25 season, Airdrieonians were ultimately saved from automatic relegation from the Championship when Hamilton Academical were deducted 15 points at the tail end of the campaign, but there was no such reprieve this year, and the Diamonds went down via the playoffs. Rhys McCabe, the player-manager, suddenly departed the club 2 games into the season. Remember Rhys McCabe? And he was replaced by Danny Lennon, and Lennon was the wrong man at the wrong time, and his appointment was a bit of a catastrophe. His reign lasted just 8 matches and yielded just 2 points. And it felt as though from that point on, Airdrie were very much playing catch-up. Aaron Taylor-Sinclair, the coach, stepped up as the interim manager before taking charge on a permanent basis, and their form did pick up over the second half of the season. I think on the whole it was decent mid-table form, but they finished in 9th place after failing to beat Greenock Morton on the final day of the season, and they were relegated by Alloa Athletic after 2 poor performances in the playoffs. Taylor-Sinclair departed at the end of the season. A statement on the website said the club has made the decision to move in a different direction, and that different direction is John Rankin. Rankin, of course, has been on last season as the Hamilton Academical manager, did an admirable job in holding everything together during the horrendous mismanagement of a failing regime that saw points deductions, transfer embargoes, player departures, and he left the club in late November. We mentioned in the Championship section he took charge of United at the tail end of the campaign, steered them away from relegation, and now he comes in at the Excelsior. He's described Airdrie as being like a blank canvas, and it's an exciting opportunity for him, and I'm keen to see how he gets on working at a normal football club, and this feels like a normal football club that probably going to get into the top 4.
I would imagine so, but it's funny that he's spoken about it being a blank canvas, because I kind of feel, you see, for the last couple of years it's always felt like when we've talked about Airdrie, we've mentioned the fact that they have a glut of players who are neat, tidy, technically proficient, maybe a bit lightweight, and too many similar players and without a goal threat. And you're right, I mean, so many players have been moved on from last season's team. It's interesting how many of them actually have went either sideways or up the way as well, even though they had such a poor campaign regardless. So like, right, well, surely you cannot possibly repeat the same mistakes of the last couple of seasons. And I know it was like maybe they had Concilium, for example, that was doing a lot of their, or getting a lot of players from Concilium. But I'll look at this squad again, and to be fair, I mean, there's a lot of players that I'm not overly familiar with, but from watching them, it looks like they have a glut of midfielders who are diminutive, technically good, lightweight. You wonder how they'll get on. And again, not much of a goal threat. So it almost feels like, yeah, it's a clean slate and a blank canvas, but they've essentially painted the same picture again.
I find the recruitment really interesting. I was looking through the team, and it's a young squad.
Yep.
This is a really young squad. They've got one player in the team over the age of 30, and we'll be taking a big deep dive into him very quickly. And it's just, I appreciate you're putting a squad together, and if you're working on quite a limited budget, which imaginary Dronians are, which has even been cut even further back now that you've dropped into the League One, I think you'll be going on the fact that you're full time and you might be able to try and pass your way around opponents. I think that might work against some of the teams. I think they actually look, and to a degree, quite similar in makeup to East Kilbride in ways, but I think East Kilbride on paper are a better team, got a better calibre of player. But it just feels like it's lacking in a number of areas, like you say, up front, of reliable goal scorer. Certainly not since Ewan Henderson's moved on to Partick Thistle. Quite, I'd say, softish at the back. And in the midfield, it's just like a broadly similar kind of player. And I'm not sure if that's really the kind of football that John Rankin wants to play or sees what's best for Airdronians, but it feels like for a lot of like bottom of the barrel full time clubs, these are the kind of players that you're kind of stuck with, if you know what I mean.
And you're right. So I think they're probably dealing with a limited budget. But despite that, it feels like they have recruited two first choice, like two goalkeepers that you would imagine could be first choice, which feels like a waste. So they had, I think Jamie Snedden is, I think that's quite a good goalkeeper for League One. I thought, right, that makes sense. Then they bring in Rory Adams.
He's also a decent League One goalkeeper.
Yeah, well, who is your first choice? And I suppose the part of the issue with Adams last season was that he kept getting recalled by Dundee United. So I found that quite a confusing addition, when it feels like there's so many other areas of the park where maybe more of a needs-must situation. So maybe like a ball-winning midfielder or a decent finisher, or
you don't know. Maybe the arrangement from Dundee United is they're paying him an absolute pittance. That they're taking like an absolute fraction of his wage, and that's the equivalent. You could have two good goalkeepers rather than having like a good goalkeeper and a mediocre like teenage goalkeeper that's never ever going to play. Kind of hedge your bets for the same amount of money. I don't know what the arrangement.
I mean,
is.
they already had is it Cade Melrose?
Yes,
they had in their books. Now he has played for the team. Obviously, he had that mistake against Partick Thistle. So I understand that maybe there's a lack of confidence. But I think if you have Snedden and him, that was probably adequate. So I found it confusing.
There's, at this level, I think when you really get down to like the fag end of Scottish football, you need, I think, for clubs with small budgets or smaller budgets, two goalkeepers, one who you spend a lot of money on, and you get a quality goalkeeper who's experienced and you can trust and you can rely on, and you get a teenager who's just there to put the bibs in the bag of training and basically act as a training goalkeeper. And if anything goes wrong, you're straight on the phone to one of your pals at like Hibs or Hearts, say, can you lend us a goalkeeper there? And you get him in. You don't. I think that's spending decent, or what could be decent money. As you say, Snedden and Melrose, fine. Adams and Melrose, fine. Adams, Snedden and Melrose, just a bit too much.
I mean, in fairness, it maybe allows Melrose to go out on loan, so he could maybe get a season somewhere under his belt. So maybe it does make sense.
Yeah, it might do. And in front of them, you've got there's some decent players there. You've got Sam Fisher's coming from Dunfermline Athletic. Seen him on loan at Stennismuir, was loan at Kelty Hearts last. I was at Kelty Hearts last season. Yeah. Like Fisher's, he's not the tallest of players. I mean, but neither's Craig Ross, and he's a decent centre back alongside him. Fisher's probably his best assets is long passing. I think he's really good. I mean, he reads the game well. He can do all the stuff you'd want from a defender. But I think one of the more interesting aspects of him is how he can start attacks with some of those booming diagonals. So good for if that's the kind of football that Rankin wants to play. He can play short passes as well, of course, but that's a good thing to have in your arsenal. And on top of that as well, can fill in at right back as well. I think for Kelty, he was playing at right back, so you do get not quite like a central midfielder, somebody who's good at the ball in those positions. And of course, in defence, they will be playing alongside Declan Gallagher, who has joined the club as the player/assistant manager from Ross County.
A signing that hasn't went down too well from what I can gather. I don't think I am more hopeful, not hopeful. I am more expectant that he will have a decent season, and I think he might be an okay addition to the team. I know Airdrie fans don't seem to think so. I think if you're going to play a back three and you want them to sit reasonably deep, then Declan Gallagher is absolutely fine. If you want to play a back four and play a bit higher, then he's not going to be any good whatsoever. And I know he was. I mean, he was desperate last season. He was absolutely woeful. I think the signing didn't work out in any shape, way, or form. I don't think he wanted to be there ultimately. I think probably the terms of his arrangement with Ross County changed when he went up there as well.
What I'd heard,
and had to spend a lot more time up there than he probably hoped. I think he'll be absolutely fine. Playing a division below, I would imagine Rankin won't ask him to do anything that he can't do. He might not even play that much if he's the assistant manager. But I think playing in a back three and just asking him to defend, he's fine.
Aye, that's exactly what I've got in my notes there. I think that Ross County the worst team in Scotland last season, and I think Declan Gallagher might have been the worst player there. You're right in what you say. It was a move that didn't work out. just catastrophic errors. You've come there, and on top of that, because Gallagher has been a right good player in the past, 9 caps for Scotland. You know, part of the team that qualified for Euro 2020.
He was decent in the top flight 2 seasons ago.
He was fine. I mean, I know he was kind of marginalised at Dundee United, but he came in and did a job, and I think was quite well thought of there. And in fact, I was at their Player of the Year night when Jim Goodwin actually thanked him specifically he was leaving the club, but thanked him for the job that he did. So, like. He is a good player, but last season you're right, man, just didn't look as though he wanted to be there. And I think as well, his personality, I don't think he's the kind of person that responds well to stick or fan. There's some people when they're getting pelters from the terraces can just block it out as fucking noise, but I think he's the kind of person that needs to bite back. You see on like comments and like TikTok and stuff like that, like going backwards and forwards with folk in that hotel that think he's shite. Gives a fuck if somebody thinks you're shite. You're the guy. You've played for Scotland. You're the guy who makes a living as a football player. Why do you care what some wee fanny thinks? But I think people know that he reacts like that, so people are more likely to go for him. And his time at Ross County was just an absolute shambles. Will his time at Airdrie be any better? I can understand if you're a County fan, you'd be dismayed. But as you say, when you think about it like that, keep it simple. Playing a back three, just don't move from the edge of the penalty box and just header and kick the ball as far away as possible. Say, I don't know how Rankin's going to play. If you've got Craig Ross on one side, he's a wee bit more technical. Sam Fish on the other side, we just discussed him.
Yep,
that can bring out the best in him. I think when you've got a back three, I just think that for your main dominant centre back, the middle of the three, I'm going to imagine they're and traditionally, they're going to be the most immobile and the ones that can be most exposed. So rather than focusing on what they can do, focus when they can do it and then cover up the limitations with guys around them. I think that's what Rankin would look to do. The fact that he's been brought in as a coach as well, you hopefully that he's got a degree more responsibility at the team, that he takes that seriously, and he's just not as riled up by punters online, because I find that, I mean, it's easy for me. I mean, it's not easy for me to say, because to a lesser extent, much lesser extent than Declan Gallagher, you and I are in the public eye. To an extent, you've had folk like messages like View for the Terrace is shite, or podcast shite, cares. Okay, listen to this thing. I mean, it's not like somebody texts, somebody gets in touch and says like a View for the Terrace is shite. Well, you know what? Go and start your own podcast. It's fine. It's not like you say go and start your own football team. Go and become a football player in your own right. It doesn't quite work like that.
I suppose the concern though is when you drop down to League One and crowds are a bit more sparse.
Oh, you can hear them.
It's maybe a wee bit easier to hear those messages.
And just wait till he's back up in Dingwall, and wait till the lads from Dingwall down there, because he will get it tight for 90 minutes. He'll get it tight, and he has seen this quite an emotional player that will respond to that kind of stuff.
And if he doesn't start particularly well, so let's say Airdrie start the season in a kind of sticky fashion, and he maybe doesn't have a particularly great game. Like, Airdrie fans aren't like shy about kind of coming forward. They will offer their opinion. I must admit, I don't think that will happen. I think he'll be fine, but I completely understand the hesitance that Airdrie fans are feeling about it.
Yeah, you've got to hope he's got that fire in the belly, because I think broadly throughout his career, he has been a decent player on the whole, like a decent player. Just that one season feels like it was an aberration, and it was like so catastrophically bad for him and for Ross County, that you just hope he puts that behind him and can basically take Airdrie where they feel they need to go. But we'll wait and see. But I do agree with you on that there. One of the players that's come in, a player I am familiar with, Matty Yates, is coming from Linfield. I actually thought that when he left the Warriors, he would go straight to Airdrie. He just took a year out at Linfield before doing it. Final goal in Scotland actually was a consolation goal against Airdrie in the playoffs back in 2025. It would have been. Good wee player. I think that he's very tenacious, quite technical as well. Weirdly enough, a good target man as long as the ball's played into his feet. You know, he's quite wee, so he's not going to go win many headers. But in terms of like the ball sticks to him, and he's got quite a big arse as well, so he can get it in. He can pop it off around them.
I was trying to because I think that was one of their first signings of the summer. I was like, that feels like quite a decent capture. But I was trying to remember if he was an actual forward or if he was more somebody that would play wide. I couldn't really remember.
He can play in all. He can actually play right across he can play across the attacking three. He can play as a striker. I think he's best just off the striker, where he can, because he is quite technical and quite creative, and he can pop the balls in, and he's not afraid to have a shot. So if you're pairing him with a big man, I think that would work quite well.
It kind of feels like they're going into a season where, and I wondered if he would play a decent role in this season because we're in League One. It feels like maybe they're only out and out forward because Maboudi's injured again already, and he's that kind of injury afflicted player throughout his career. Divine Isarinian
is a
Heinrich. I like to look at him at Edinburgh City. I appreciate he would. It's a big leap from League 2 to League 1. I don't think he's in much of a look in so far in the League Cup games. But that again means that we are starting a campaign where Airdrie don't really have a striker.
Yeah, and talk about it, brought Liam McLeishan from Queen's Park, and I think I don't think you're going to get many goals from him. I think he's more just somebody who's going to like put himself about up front. I mean, useful option to have if you're like quite enthusiastic, but I think when your best quality is putting yourself about, that's you're not going to get many goals from it. You're right in terms of what you say in terms of like diminutive technical players. When I've got them like written down here. There's like Cole McKinnon, the Williams brothers, Keane Taylor, Gavin Gallagher, and there seems to be a sort of thing in Pine Bobs about Gavin Gallagher's father's use of social media.
I always hate reading that stuff. There always seems to be a bit of a pile on somebody who they suspect is Gallagher's dad. Now it might be, I don't know, and he seems to stick up for him, then he gets a load of abuse, then he disappears, then another account pops up that'll occasionally stick up for him. It's just a horrible thing. It's just like Gallagher's dad is getting bullied on Pine Buffalo. It's a horrible thing to see. Really don't like it.
Sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing like that. I shouldn't be laughing at bullying. Bullying's not fun, even if it is a player's father. And you got Robbie McMahon as well, who this is his. Joined the club in January from Edinburgh City. I think he's a good dribbler, but again quite predictable, sort of in that John Robertson way where he'll want to play in the right and always want to come to his left.
More of his level though, I suppose. I thought he was okay last season, but no more than that. I do think dropping down you will see the best of him ultimately at a level that probably suits him more. So you might get goals from him. Other than that, I'm not entirely sure though.
Yeah, that's the big issue where goals are coming from. And there's Adam Devine as well. He's a good fullback, but he's not a goal scorer. Just someone had down my notes. I remember he got a wee shot at, he went alone at Motherwell, didn't he, and did quite well for them.
I think you're right, yeah.
So obviously his career's maybe not gone the direction he wants, but hopefully playing every week he can get back to where he thinks he wants to be. As well, I think what I find most interesting about this is John Rankin. Yeah. We kind of touched on it there when we were doing the wee overview of Airdrie and tying in guys like Rankin and like Aaron Taylor Sinclair, Danny Lennon and so on. Is John Rankin a good football manager?
No idea. Like, I've got that in my notes as well. Still not sure if he's good. I mean, let's face it, was a mixed bag at Hamilton. Oversaw relegations, oversaw promotions, oversaw a cup win, and hugely difficult circumstances. And at points, the fans were desperate to get rid of him. By the end, I think there was a respect for what he'd done. And I thought when he went to Ayr, I thought that's a good appointment. I think he will keep them up. He'll probably do quite well over the last kind of 5 or 6 games, and he will get that job. He didn't really do anything that was particularly positive at Ayr, and you're right. I think he'll be disappointed that didn't work out because he would have thought that was a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And now he's went to Airdrie, and we're still in a position, however many years down the line, I don't think anybody is entirely sure if he's up to much.
I think
Comes across well.
Yeah, that's. I think it's a statesman that he comes across really well. I think that his reputation was massively enhanced. Sadly, that was one of the if there was any positives to come from the sort of the decline of Hamilton Academical last season, it was the fact that Rankin really rose to prominence in that and was leading that group of players through a really, really difficult period. I think that his interviews that he sounded so good, and he was trying to remain upbeat and positive about a team that were really, really sinking. And I think the hard work that he must have had to put in. I mean, that's when he talked about leaving the club. It was affecting his family life,
yeah.
which your work shouldn't affect your family life. But the fact that I think he must have been absolutely knocking his pan in for that group of players there to make sure that they were getting paid and they somewhere to train, somewhere to wash their kits, all the things that you would take for granted.
Yeah.
He's making sure that this group of players have still got them. And like I say, his interviews were always really good. He is just a really good interview, even though it's can be a bit ranking bingo at times with some of the stuff that he's that he says. But during that period, his reputation was enhanced. But then going prior to that, you're absolutely right. Folk would have happily seen him leave the club. Talked about it a number of times. Regular listeners will be familiar with this story of going to watch Hamilton versus Dunfermline, sitting close to the Accies dugout so I could see that, because I was expecting something bad to happen. Ultimately, Hamilton won that match 1-0. But there's a bit where Rankin, I mean, he was standing and he had to go leave the dugout area because basically it was covered, so you couldn't see. You could hear him, but you couldn't see him. There's a bit where he had to come out the dugout to basically shout instructions. Bang your fucking box, you! Somebody shout them. So it's like, what chance do you have if you're getting that degree of pelters? But that's what I'm looking for. His, I think there was on top of that, his tactical acumen was called into question at times, or sometimes as the way he set up his teams, in-game substitutions, how to react to things. I think that was found lacking. But you're right, he did give Hamilton Accies fans some great moments, like the Challenge Cup win. I mean, they got relegated that season, but that was a nice moment. Beating Inverness Caledonian Thistle to send them down, that's class.
Yeah, this is. I mean, obviously it's a massive season for Airdrie. They'll want to bounce back at the first opportunity. I think it'll be difficult for them. But it's massive for Rankin as well, because spoke about them at Hamilton. Very, very hard to judge. But I think if he is going to have a decent managerial career, as you say, it's a blank slate, a reasonably stable club, they're a full-time team in League One. If it doesn't go particularly well, you do wonder what his next move would be. So I think it's a massive test for him as well.
Yeah, you can imagine him going to academy coaching or something. If it does, I hope it does work out, because I do like John Rankin, but I think it'd be like academy coaching or like an assistant manager somewhere. Because that seems to be what his best skill set is, like leaving the tactics to and all that to someone else, but you're still involved and you're still that positive influence.
Maybe Declan Gallagher's great with tactics and he'll be absolutely fine.
Could you imagine this is the new Brian Clough and Peter Taylor? That would be extraordinary if we've somehow stumbled upon this. Got to say though, the results and performances in the League Cup group stages have been a mixed bag. If you're being charitable, you would say that he used it as an opportunity to experiment with his team.
They looked okay in the first half against Dundee.
Yeah,
I thought they looked really poor against Clyde. They were very dominant against a pretty poor looking Annan team, and then obviously I expected them to lose against Ross County. I haven't seen anything from that game, but it's been I was going to say they've done what you expect, but no, I mean that loss to Clyde is concerning. I do wonder if it will be representative of their season. I don't mean losing games to Clyde, but I think they've got a fight on their hands for a top four spot. You would imagine that they should do it, because they've got a big squad. There is some talent in there, but there's obviously key deficiencies.
Yeah,
and there's some part-time teams that have spent that have put a really decent squad together. So I think it'll be a challenge to finish top four.
I think so as well. I think that you take on, one of the good things with League Cup group stages, teams, certainly League One, League Two teams are never ever going to win the competition. So at best, you use them to see how you're faring. It's part of pre-season, but see when you've got a team in it who you're going to play in the league, I think that's always a really good opportunity to see exactly how you're going to fare. And the fact that Ross County, turned them over
Yeah.
like quite comfortably by all accounts. It was like really straightforward for them. Ross County are looking quite handy for the season ahead.
Yep.
It would be like, well, if this is the best team in the division and we've just like been like
Swept
over
aside
by them, how's that going to look for the remainder of the campaign? How are you calling it?
Fourth.
I'm going for fourth as well. I'll go for fourth. Now we'll move to Alloa Athletic. Last season on the whole was pretty good for Alloa Athletic and for Andy Graham, having missed out in the playoffs on the final day of the 2024-25 season. Graham was coming into the campaign under a wee bit of pressure, but the Wasps largely delivered and spent the entire campaign inside the top four. He relied on stalwarts like Scott Taggart, Stevie Hetherington, Curtis Roberts, Luke Donnelly, and augmented them with a series of high calibre loan signings from Rangers. And just an aside, to think of, if there was one club that benefited the most from the cooperation agreement, you'd probably say it was Alloa Athletic. Now, the side would finish the season in fourth place, and although they relegated Airdrieonians in the promotion playoff semi-finals, they were beaten by Stennismuir in the final, and they remain a League One club. This is now 5 years they've spent in the division. It's been a story of near misses over those 5 years, and the big challenge for Andy Graham is to take Alloa one step further. He came within touching distance last season. Can he touch it this time?
I have my doubts.
Yeah,
they've had, feels like they had like just a really slow summer. Like when they brought in, so obviously Liam McFarlane moved on, and then when they brought in Ross Stewart,
it was like, that's good.
That's a really, really good signing. As good as they could probably do in terms of bringing in a permanent keeper for League One. The rest of their signings, I mean, I know they've got more young guys in from Rangers, almost like you're starting again.
Yeah.
There's some more young guys, and it worked last season. It made such a massive difference. But those loan players were so vital to their promotion push last season. And also, I know he must have been 38, 39. I think Connor Salmon retiring, I think that is a blow, because in terms of him coming off the bench, generally his cameos were very, very positive.
I've got that. I've got that in my notes there. Big, strong boy, very professional. Always gave me the fear when Alloa summoned him from the bench.
There is still a nub of that team that done well last season. There is still some experienced pros, but I think they're going into this season quite undercooked.
It's always a difficulty when you've got such a reliance on loan players, and I think that when you look at the loan players that Alloa had last season, again, we talked about how good the cooperation agreement was, but perhaps they did really, really well from some of the boys that they brought in. So the guys that won't be returning, you've got Liam McFarlane, who was an outstanding goalkeeper. Yeah, he's probably the only player that they've made an adequate replacement for. Charlie Dewar, really, really good centre back. He's not going to be there. They've bought a boy in Joe Ellison, who was at Berwick Rangers. So how will he step up from the Lowland League into League One? Lewis Stewart, Callum Burnside, Callum Adamson. Really, really good players. And you're right, you're starting again. Kyle Glasgow looks like he's shown up very well. A really, really nice goal. And the 1-1 draw with Falkirk seemed to really like the way he took that.
Keeper should have saved it though.
Aye, well,
it was a decent strike, but it shouldn't have went in.
Aye, if you want to spoil things, then yeah, aye, he should have saved it. But I think that's the challenge there. How do you replace these loan players? Yes, you're starting again, Max Cameron and Kyle Glasgow. The rest of the guys that have come in, so you've gone from like Lewis Stewart, who ultimately turned into be an absolutely superb winger. You're bringing Josh Walker in from Elgin City,
who didn't do that well at Elgin. Like was he one of Elgin's best players? Certainly was one of the better players in the division.
It feels like, he's only about 24, 25. He's had so many clubs in his CV already, and it feels like he just bounces from club to club every 6 months. He's been at like Queen of the South and Stranraer. I think he was at Annan. He's been at Elgin. Now he's at Alloa. It wouldn't surprise me in January if he went off to Clyde or somewhere like that. So I don't know why that is. I don't know what that tells you if someone's moving from clubs with such a degree of frequency. He might be all right. There's definitely a player in there. Like you can see when you watch him play, he is quite skillful, but he is quite inconsistent. And I think that he's the kind of player that inconsistency leads to him dropping the head, and when he drops the head, he's pretty ineffective. So hopefully Andy Graham can maybe unlock something that we've yet to see from him. And
I know there's been, in terms of their performances, largely they were poor. I suppose if you want to be positive, you can cling to that Falkirk game. But I think on another day, Falkirk do win that match.
Yeah.
Like Alloa defended quite resolutely, but Falkirk squandered a number of opportunities. But the other games, they looked terrible against Edinburgh City.
Yeah.
they looked fortunate to get a draw against Stranraer in the 2-2 game, and then lost, as you would expect, but very convincingly. United kind of swept them aside 4-1 in the last match day. So other than the Falkirk game, which in fairness is a big positive, I thought they've looked like a poor League One team.
Aye, when Edinburgh City, and this is very much a new look Edinburgh City team, by all accounts, that was so easy for them. 2-0 actually flattered Alloa, because Edinburgh found it so easy to play through them. I think that, I'm not sure if the shape was different for there. He tried to go to a back three or something. It was just easy enough for Edinburgh to play through. But
I can't remember if it was the first or second goal. It was just that kind of catalogue of errors. It was like a kind of poor goal kick, and then I think a poor goal kick from this guy that we're saying is guarantee you'll never think about Liam McFarlane again once you see Ross Stewart in action. But when the ball was played back, it was like the defender and the goalkeeper didn't talk to one another, and I can't remember who scored it, but he just kind of nipped in between them. I mean, it was really poor. Yeah, can't wait to talk about Edinburgh City, by the way. really looking forward to that. I suppose that when you rely on loans, as Alloa Athletic have done, you need to make sure you get the spine of the team right. And I think that that's something that when we were talking about, I can't remember who we were talking about earlier on, but if you can get that spine right, I think it was Arbroath we were talking about. When you get that spine right, then you can add a wee bit of salt and pepper in there, and that's what Andy Graham seems to be doing. You put a good goalkeeper, decent back line, bit of legs in the park, and a striker, then you can add on the wee nimble boys that are coming in from Rangers. And I think that's exactly what they've got. If you think of the defenders, like Scott Taggart's just a right good player. I think Scott Taggart for a number of years has just been a very solid player. Can play I think he can play right across the back three. He's not particularly fast anymore, and he'll not really want to move outside the goalposts if he's playing at centre back. But head the ball, shoot, good penalty taker as well when called upon. Cammy O'Donnell is developing in a really good fullback. I think there was actually talk he was going to go elsewhere in the summer, move up a level. I don't know if he has the capabilities to do that just yet. I think he can do. He looks like Joel Sked, goes to the same hairdresser. And then you've got that midfield trio. Trio, God, I can't speak. I woke up at 5:30 this morning to finish up doing these notes. When I'm talking, I feel like, Craig, you're slurring your words. Folk would think I had a glass of wine before I came on here. I can assure you I haven't. I've been drinking water all day. But that midfield trio of Stephen Skugel, Curtis Roberts, Stevie Hetherington, just class. Yep. Really, really good. I think, but they're all starting to get on a wee bit now. They probably do need legs in there somewhere. They've got that. They've brought in Grant Marchant's coming from Kilmarnock. He is sort of going to give them that, try to reprise what Curtis Roberts does. He got a bad injury against Stennismuir at the tail end of last season, and he's missing for the next wee bit. But Marchant will give them that verticality. Roberts is a player who I think really suits well what Alloa are doing, and it sounds horrible to say about a player when they're injured, but I was actually quite relieved when he was taken off the pitch, because he was being such a pain in the arse to try and play against, and he's somebody that's really good at he makes the game look like it's going 100 miles an hour, but not in a bad way, if you know what I mean. It just feels like everything he's doing, it's quite, I think he provokes panic in opposition teams just by his that kind of way he's playing. And then when you add in someone like Stephen Skugel, who's all those silky touches and really adept at taking the ball in space and knocking on, gives you that wee bit of creativity for the park. And he's got a real steady Eddie like Stevie Hetherington, who's just a good player. I know they are a year older, but I don't think there's a massive drop off. It might get to the stage where you might need to try and like what we've been saying about Stuart Petrie for many years, you might need to turn around the midfield, but I think that Andy Graham's a long way away from having to do that. And they've still got the mercurial Luke Donnelly as an option up front. Who knows what to expect from him? Who knows? The worst best player on the planet. He's, the skill set of Dennis Bergkamp, but the consistency of porridge. Genuinely, do you remember the goal that he scored at Palmerston last season? Yep. My favourite goal of the season. I would actually put it as not just my favourite goal of the season, I put it as the goal of the season, because you see goals, you see goals for 30 yards scored for time to time. You don't see goals like that scored. That's like a piss take at 5-a-sides goal. It's actually happening in a professional game of football on an 11-sides pitch. To dump the goalkeeper in his arse twice and then flick the ball over him, you just don't see that kind of thing. So it's astonishing. But
That's the big issue. It's a conundrum. How do you get the best out of him? We interviewed Andy Graham after he won, I think it was the March or February manager of the month for League One, which is brilliant, great fun. Oh, I need to email
yes,
back about doing that. Sorry, there's a wee peek behind the curtain for myself and Shaughan. I need to email the person who's organising these manager of the months. Yes, Shaughan and I would love to do it again. I will tell you via writing very soon. So it's horrible when you realise something midway through you're trying to be professional with a podcast. But when we interviewed Andy Graham, he spoke about how you get the best out of Luke Donnelly, and it's basically get legs and energy around him, let him do all the fancy stuff, all the neat wee touches, and then you get the boys around him that can really unlock something from it. It worked briefly last season. I think we've taken out again around February and March time where Donnelly was just superb. I mean, you watch Alloa highlights and it's pretty much watching like Luke Donnelly's individual highlight reel.
He was scoring excellent goals every week,
scoring excellent goals, creating them as well. And I liked what Andy Graham was saying is like, you've got these boys that are coming in from like Rangers and Celtic, guys who are playing with some of the best young players in the country, looking at Luke Donnelly in training.
Can't believe what they've
absolutely agog that this guy, what on earth are you doing playing for Al Athletic? Listen, watch 90 minutes, you'll quickly find out. They've got other strikers as well at the club, and I think they're question marks. I mean, Luke Donnelly is I think he's a favourite of Graham's. He's I think there was questions about who was going to be the principal striker at Alloa, and it's Donnelly. That's he's emerged as Graham's first pick. But you've got Callum Gallagher and Luke Rankin there, and I think Gallagher's been a bit of a disappointment because there was one point where he was like the best part-time player in the country, or certainly one of the best part-time strikers in the country when he was Airdrieonians.
Yeah.
I think the only reason he moved on is just because the circumstances of the club meant that he couldn't train with them and give them the commitment they needed. But he was like really quite an acrobatic player as well, quite a penchant for the spectacular, but just a good, aggressive, big back-to-goal centre forward, like a complete number 9, could do everything. You just don't really get that much from him these days.
I could be wrong here, but I'm sure he started off last season injured, and it felt like he was never really properly fit. Even when he came back into the team, maybe latterly in the season, hopefully with a proper pre-season, you can rely on him this time around, because you're right. I thought he was a great forward at part-time level, but yeah, question marks over him.
Yeah, definitely. And there's Luke Rankin as well. Didn't have too much of an impact last season, but I think the times I've seen him, I think he's a good player. I think he's a good finisher. Can hit the ball hard, can hit the ball early, but I just think his all-round game needs to be improved. And if you're playing one up front in that system that Andy Graham likes playing, then
yeah. I mean, they had two decent goals against Stranraer in the League Cup. But that's kind of all well and good, like scoring against Stranraer, who might be decent in League 2 this season, who knows, but is he going to manage 1 or 2 goals against Airdrie or East Kilbride or Montrose? I don't know if you can rely on him at that level.
Yeah, I find Andy Graham like really fascinating on a personal level. I absolutely adore the man. I think he's great company. He's he radiates. That's how I describe him. So he feels like perfect to be a football manager, but I can maybe understand the criticisms against him, where it's like you're kind of too rigid with the kind of football that you want to play. You're too loyal to some players like Donnelly, for instance. I mean, it's great for us to get a chance to talk about him because we just watch like a 10-minute highlights package every week. But if you've got to, if you had to watch it every week, you'd tearing your hair out. And I think as well, there was perceived to be wasting his budget on signing players that are just injury prone and not allowed to play. Like Callum Waters didn't play a lot of football last season, but you knew that when you were going to sign him. And there was Dan Church, who, I mean, sadly he's retired, and I wish him well the next stage of his career. But you signed him after he made like a handful of appearances for Queen of the South. I think he played 2 appearances last season before having to retire. And it feels like you spent money on an area that you kind of know, someone talking about Grant Savoury. Don't take risks when you're working within in constraints.
But then I suppose, so yeah, I don't disagree with that, but it does feel like, I'm guessing Alloa don't have the biggest budget in the world, but generally speaking, they do challenge for the top 4, or they are going for promotion. Last season, they were a wee bit unfortunate potentially to lose to Sendai. They certainly made a good fist of it in that second leg.
There was a header, I think maybe Cammy O'Donnell had a header saved by Darren Jameson. If that had gone in, they could have easily gone on to win the game.
So I know that Andy Graham does get criticised. I'm not saying that's unwarranted, but generally speaking, I think he maybe outperforms his budget.
Maybe sometimes like fans just they They just want to see like some.
I don't know if it's always the most exciting football to watch. Therefore,
That's the thing though. They can be exciting. They certainly were exciting last season, and I get the feeling that the team's quite stodgy, but then you add the lone players in, and if guys like Max Cameron can click and Kyle Glasgow can click, then I think Alloa can look really good. When they were at their best, and when they have been at their best, weirdly actually over the last like 3 or 4 years, it's come through the lone players. If you remember when they had like Bobby Wales playing for them and Taylor Stephen, they were class. They looked really, really, really good. And I think a lot of times it's just you build the foundation. I mean, you're not going to have a laugh like, what's the least interesting appliance in the house? Like you're not going to have fun with a boiler, but you could have potentially fun with a whisk. If you know what I mean. That's a terrible example. It's a terrible analogy.
Can't have that much fun with a whisk.
No, I'm looking around Fowler's. And I just
make a cake.
There's an extractor fan. Yeah.
Can you have fun with any?
You can annoy your neighbours with the extractor fan. You could put someone's knob in a blender and a whisk. No, right. Like I have lost it on myself. I have been up. I barely slept. I've gone catatonic. Oh my goodness. Where do you think Alloa Athletic are going to finish?
Don't see them troubling the top 4 spots this season. Should have enough to stay out the kind of muck at the bottom though, but maybe 7th.
For 7th or 8th. I hope Andy Graham does well. Like him very much indeed, and hope he can take the team to just taking that. They've had so many near misses.
Yep.
They've come within touching distance to the playoffs or to actually getting promoted itself. It'd be great to see if he can actually do it and influence it. But I just feel as though there's too many teams that's going to shove them further down, and they're just. I think they're just one of the unfortunate consequences of being in this division.
Yeah.
It's just going to be more difficult for a team like Alloa Athletic. Let's talk about Cove Rangers. Speaking of teams that are in for a difficult season. Now, having reached the playoff finals in the 24-25 season, there was a degree of hope that Cove Rangers would repeat the feat last time out, and they almost did. The relegation playoffs, that is. That's like call an ambulance. Not for me. Now, Paul Hartley's team experienced a dreadful start to the campaign. Actually, when I was looking up how bad they started, I actually did an intake of breath. It was like, oof, wow. They picked up just 2 points from the first 10 matches. And, I didn't think Cove were ever as bad as the results suggested. I think I looked over the stats. There were never any points in the season where they were thrashed. 16 defeats over the course of the season. Only 5 were by 2-goal margins. But they had a very, very small squad of players relying on the same core of players every week, and results would pick up from the second quarter onwards, and the team probably deserve a lot from dragging themselves away from danger in those circumstances. But they finished the season in 7th place with 38 points. This is uncharted territory for Cove Rangers. This is the first time they are playing an SPFL season without any of the players from their Highland League days. Blair Ewell, Mitch Megginson, both defected for Cove Rangers. And I think this is going to be a pretty hard time out for Cove Rangers.
The biggest surprise for me is that Paul Hartley stayed. Like, I appreciate he must have an affinity to the club. I appreciate that they all have bills to pay. But I thought how he and Cove Rangers finished the season, he might be able to step away, because it feels like this is the end. It kind of feels like it's an end of a cycle for Cove Rangers, and he could probably walk away and say, well, I kept him up, but a decent end to the campaign, and maybe an opportunity would arise for him somewhere. But I just find Cove Rangers a confusing team about like who are they for, and how are they approaching things. Like as a full-time club, we know it hasn't really worked. Okay, they had that season in the Championship.
They weren't a full-time club.
They're a hybrid club. So let's say, I mean, what is their situation? Are they hybrid?
I think
at the moment.
I think they're full-time.
So full-time at the moment. That looks like a really, really poor squad of players. So it feels like they're attempting to do the same thing that already hasn't worked, but with a poorer calibre of squad. So for the life of me, I can't think how that is going to work. And I know maybe you can't do that over a summer. Maybe you have to transition back to hybrid or back to part-time. But in terms of where they are right now, as you say, I think this is going to be a really horrible, horrible season. Albeit they beat East Kilbride 3-2 in that first League Cup game, and you thought, actually, maybe they've got a bit about them. Maybe they have brought in like Jordan White. Maybe they have brought in enough to sustain them and keep them in the division again. But the rest of the campaign's been miserable.
Aye. When I saw that result against East Kilbride, because East Kilbride had just beaten Dunfermline
And were excellent.
a couple of days prior, and that's a really good performance from East Kilbride, and I'm really looking forward to it. Let's get through Cove Rangers so we can talk about East Kilbride instead. But aye, that was a kind of result where you were thinking, right, that's a big result for East Kilbride, but Cove beating them, it kind of felt like, listen, we are the first promoted team. Oh, sorry, we were one of the early promoted teams from the SP to the SPFL. We will show you how it's done, lads. And then you get absolutely turned over by Dunfermline and St Mirren and Dumbarton as well. I actually messaged Fraser Clark to ask just how do you think Cove got on at the weekend. He said he didn't really rate them at all. They're just like really not a lot going on up front. They've got this is a weird range of players. The guys who are, and I actually thought this was weird, the guys who are actually good football players like Chris Maguire and Jordan White, although Jordan White being a good football player, but you know, there might be question marks for that. But like Chris Maguire, Jordan White, they can't move. But the guys are all mobile and all that, aren't particularly good football players. So it's not a particular recipe for success. And on top of that as well, the goals are losing. They just look slow to react to stuff, like easily prized apart. A lot of the players seem to like ball watch a lot of time. There might be a lack of concentration there. And maybe you can get away with that once, and when you watch it back, you see like you need to, when this happens, you need to be thinking about that. I don't know what they are. I mean, one of the guys that they've brought in, I found this an absolutely extraordinary signing. Not to slag the guy off or anything, because I don't know anything about it, but I call Max Suter, who they signed from Inverurie Local Works. Now, when I saw Cove Rangers signing a guy from Inverurie Local Works, I thought this might be a talented 19-year-old, kind of similar to Miller Keir, who's gone in at Inverness, Caledonian Thistle, where you're cherry picking guys in the local area that might do a job in full-time football. This guy spent 15 years in Inverurie Local Works. This guy will be in his 30s. What? You know, stranger things have happened, but why have you gone for this guy who's never played like SPFL football before, and you're taking him from the Highland League into full-time football? It's a huge. There's one thing, the levels, but the lifestyle change as well. Maybe the guy's not a lot of money. Maybe the guy's got interest outside of it, or maybe he might even be part-time. And he's a punt worth taking on. But from reports so far suggest that he's not really. He looks out of place. Like he's struggling a wee bit.
And like we know that their geography probably doesn't help matters. It also feels like you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot again if you're going to be a full-time club, but presumably offer some of the lowest full-time wages available, because we know that in terms of, I mean, I don't know how much, I don't know what their wage bill was, say 3 or 4 years ago, but it feels like that has been slashed to the bone compared to what it was.
It feels like the 3 players you're going to sign, you're going to get young players who've been let go by Aberdeen. You're going to get guys who are right at the fag end of their career, who probably stay like Dundee, Aberdeen area, and then it's like punts from around the planet. You know, just like guys who have rocked up on trial that you're saying, go and give us a name.
Like Edmund Opong,
yes,
for example.
Aye, who they've brought in from, was it like Hereford United or Worcester City?
Oh, he was Hereford. The other one was Akemi Francis Burrell. He's from Worcester.
Now, I'm not going to insult your intelligence. I'm not going to insult the audience's intelligence by pretending I know a single thing about these players. They could be good. You know, they could be good. But from experience, these guys never really are. The guys that have been like plucked from like 7th or 8th tier, 9th tier of English football to come in.
And even the one we know, so Destiny Oladipo, who was at East Fife last season. I mean, he wasn't bad as such, but you would regard them as a handful, not necessarily a goal. He put himself about, but that was about it.
Have you been reading my notes? That's exactly what I've got about him. Yeah, he actually scored. We covered it in the podcast. It was the East Fife's first win, and I think about 10 games. He actually scored the winning goal for East Fife in it. But I mean, I know he's shown up quite well in the pre-season friendlies, and he scored a couple of goals. But yeah, he's a handful, and I'm not sure if the plan is to play him and Jordan White up front together. You've got 2 handfuls up front, and that might be enough, but I don't think it is. It feels strange talking about Cove Rangers, and they'd certainly got, the longer they've been in the SPFL, we got like whittled away a wee bit, but they did have that identity from the Highland League days of the, like that. The team that got promoted to the SPFL would absolutely wipe the floor with this team. Like that team with guys like go through them, Fraser Fivey, like Blair Yo, Mitch Megginson, Connor Scully, all guys like that, like right good players. They would absolutely wipe the floor. Harry Milne as well would wipe the floor with them. And it feels like this is new territory, because it feels like they've lost, or certainly maybe it's not for me to say because I'm not a Cove fan, but when you're talking about them a lot, it feels like they don't feel as identifiable as they once were. And there's guys that have been there for a while, like Ballant Demas and like Aaron Darge, are long-serving players that have been there a number of years. But in terms of like your billboard players, to not have them anymore, it does feel like this is a new era for the club.
And it does feel that off the park as well, all is not well. Like I know there was something in the news. It was behind a paywall actually, but
don't worry,
it was about them having to settle.
Aye, so basically,
is that right?
Basically, they had to pay a 5-figure sum to resolve a dispute with a sponsor. It was rumoured to be about £40,000, but Cove declined to comment on what the figure actually was. There's a company called Strathclyde Commercials and Plant Limited. They had advertising boarding behind both sets of goals, and they were removed prematurely, and so the company took legal action against the club. Now, what's the interesting rub is that Jed Gaffney, who is a director at Strathclyde Commercials, his son is Miles Gaffney, who was at Cove Rangers, now at East Fife.
Yes.
It was signed for them, permanently for a rolling spell at Annan. So the Keith Moorhouse has said the legal action arose because Miles Gaffney had been dropped, and it was done out of spite. There's something that's been denied by the club. So the Cove Rangers claim this is something that's been denied by the club, but it's the second time in 12 months where a sponsor's taken Cove Rangers to court over stuff. So it just doesn't sound.
Yeah, you wonder if. I mean, hopefully it's not the case. But I always get the impression that there will be something in the pipeline, and it's going to be quite nasty at some point for Cove Rangers, because they've never really been able to tap in to get a fan base to come along from Aberdeen. And I know it's easier said than done, but they've never achieved it so far.
But it's hard to tap in when you basically play in an industrial estate south of the city. I sound like I'm giving Cove a hard time. It must sound like I've got a problem with the club, and I don't. I honestly don't. It's my least favourite ground I've been to in the SPFL. I went up there last season, and it was basically just a kind of a box ticking exercise, because the ground and the journey from Glasgow up there, I don't find that particularly appealing. And when I got there, it's just like warehouses and sort of like a motorcycle shop that's all around there. So to get there, it's not as if you can get a train to Aberdeen.
Well, when I done it, I got the train to Aberdeen, but then it was a 20-minute bus journey from the city centre to the industrial estate.
That's not fun. You know, the idea of like you travel and, like, for instance, Montrose or Arbroath, just because on the same train line from the Central Belt up there, you get off the train at Montrose, you can stop pub. Oh, and that's you at Links Park. You can do the same at Arbroath and other pubs. Stop at Tutty's, go to Pleasureland, and then go into Gayfield. You just don't have that at Cove, and that's the thing about. You can build things. It's easy to build a fan base when the team are doing well, and when I think they got decent numbers when the team had gone from the Highland League, winning League Two, really competitive at the top of League One, ultimately winning promotion. Was that during pandemic? Certainly those early years anyway in the SPFL. Were quite they were well backed, and now it just feels like a team that are just playing. And
I suppose as well it doesn't help the fact that it feels like they're certainly not the money in Aberdeen that they used to be. Like I think Cove had although it maybe wasn't the biggest, I think they always had quite a successful kind of hospitality that was kind of sold out most weeks. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case anymore, because if times are a bit tougher in Aberdeen, are you going to spend whatever it is, £100 on hospitality at Cove Rangers? Probably not. And that, I felt like that was a bit of a cornerstone of their finances as well, potentially.
It'd be the same for a lot of clubs, so isn't it? Like how important hospitality is, given how much folk will spend there, and like 50-50 tickets and all that crap when they're there as well. But I mean, we're kind of negative. There are some, like, we can talk about the players that they've brought in, because there are some positives there. Like I think Jordan White is perhaps the biggest name they've brought in. He's probably the closest thing you're going to get to a sure thing at this level.
I think he'll do well, incidentally.
I think he'll do fine. He's not the most mobile of players, and he'll need like legs around him. But if you can get balls in, he's very, very, very adept at winning flick-ons and headers. You can get a partner on side, and if that is Destin Oladipo or whoever, and you can get someone who can anticipate his runs and know like how his movement works, then it could be really profitable. I think he's a big fit guy, like looks after himself. I think when he left Ross County, he posted a statement saying like I
always went to training.
I never missed training, which is obviously a dig at other players who did maybe miss training and were still getting played ahead of him. So hopefully he can go there and make an impact. He's already been made captain, so Paul Hartley's put a lot of faith in him. But that's another player I thought that it's a good sign. Max Barry coming in from Peterhead. I really like the look of him. No danger. I mean, you're stepping up into full-time football, but I've absolutely no doubt that he can reprise what he did at Peterhead. I really like the look of him. I think it's a big blow actually for Peterhead, and it's the closest thing you're probably going to get in your price bracket to replacing Adam Emsley. Because he's going to be a huge loss, even going back to Ross County. Should have happened in January, but that's by the by. Other than that, though, it's you're taking guys from the Highland League. Boy, Aaron Fraser is coming in from Turriff. He's a former Aberdeen youth player who'll bring a bit of energy into the middle of the park. And then they've continued their cooperation with Aberdeen for the season ahead, as well as those punts that we mentioned from English non-league.
I suppose the only one who we know a wee bit about, no loads right enough, is it Victor Enham? Came in from Arbroath, right back. Now, Arbroath fans spoke reasonably highly of him, and to be fair, they would watch him every minute that he was.
You don't see a right back in
highlights, are you? I saw him in highlights, and he made a few errors. However,
was it East End Park when he tried to sort?
There was a very short pass back, certainly one of the games. But they, like Arbroath fans, thought he was absolutely fine and could be a success in League One. So maybe there's another wee glimmer of a positive there.
Yeah, they've got two good goalkeepers they can pick from. Balin Demas and Robbie Much.
Yeah, they do right enough. I was forgetting that they had two. I was going to say, and they've got Balin Demas. Actually, they've got two. Maybe that's unnecessary. Send one of them on their way.
And sign another striker who's actually fast and can run off them. The defence is the weak link. We talked about like Mark Shooter there, who's kind of struggled with the step up. You've got Leighton Bisland in there, and again, Leighton Bisland's a player I just don't particularly rate. I think I'm surprised he's playing like full-time football, but maybe that's just the mark.
Maybe Enham comes in and replaces him, but I totally agree about Bisland.
And does something different. And up front, I think maybe one of Hartley's best signings, maybe his best signing from last season, or one of his best signs. I've gone from his best to one of his best. A signing that Paul Hartley made last season. Chris Maguire actually showed up really well. I think when you see somebody who is very much in the twilight of their career, who's played at quite a high level and made quite a bit of money from football, dropping to as low a level as that, you wonder, can he really be bothered? Especially a guy in his position where you might not necessarily do as much running, but I think he's shown up really well.
I'm sure they signed him and Greg Stewart at roughly the same time. And of the two, I thought Stewart would have been a real success. Now, obviously, Stewart probably would have been a success, but he picked up a really bad injury. But Maguire kind of proved me wrong. He was good.
Again, it's probably similar to White as well. To touch on the point that Fraser made there, the guys that are your least mobile are the guys that are the best football players. So you need to get, like, it's easier said than done. You get good, fast players and around them. There you go, Paul Hartley. That's your mission. I find Hartley quite admirable. I'll say that.
Yeah, I quite like him. I think he's okay to listen to, and I think it's admirable how long he has spent there, and is, as I say, I think he has an affinity to the club, and over the piece has been broadly a success at that club, because even keeping them up at what has been difficult times for them in the past, if he can do that again this time around, then that would be another feather in his cap.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of know he's been in the post long enough because of nepotism. The fact that I don't know if he's still at the club, but certainly his father-in-law, John Sheeran, was a fairly prominent figure there and was a director at the club, or director of football, some fairly senior role for it. And maybe at points last season we mentioned 2 points from 10. That's close to sackable. I mean, fair play to the club for sticking with him.
Is that a 3-year deal he signed in the summer?
Was that right?
I'm fairly certain it was quite a lengthy deal.
My goodness. Dougie Samuel, step aside. This is the new most long-serving manager in Scottish football. But yeah, I think it's a manful job in testing circumstances. In an ideal world, you'd have the pick of the players. This is the same for every manager, but you'd pick of the players. You could build a full squad. You get it done. All the players are with you before pre-season starts, and you're ready to go and hit the ground running. But because of the the decline in revenue, or the lack of money at the club, the club's geography as well, but slightly isolated from the central belt. I'm not saying that Aberdeen's not a nice place to go and stay in. Please don't think that, but it's just the market that you're in, where it's just like punts and gambles, and hopefully using your coaching to these young boys that have come in from Aberdeen, the boys for the Highland League, that you can do something to make them better. That kicks one. I don't know. It feels like I can't see them challenging for the top four.
I have them a good bit lower.
Aye.
I think they'll finish bottom.
Finish bottom?
Yeah, I think it'll be 10th.
Nah, I think someone else is going to finish bottom.
Okay.
But I do think it's going to be a really difficult season for them. Speaking of teams that are going to finish bottom, I'm joking. No. Last year was almost a calamity for East Fife. After winning promotion to League One via the playoffs, the Fifers started the campaign strongly, and by Christmas they were sitting just at 3 points from the promotion playoffs. But Dick Campbell's side experienced a brutal run of results. From the 20th of December to the end of the season, they would take just 11 points from their final 20 matches, comfortably the worst in the lower leagues, not just the division, but the lower leagues, including Edinburgh City. After their disaster at the end of the season, that was the worst points total in that time period, and they were only spared finishing in 9th place due to Hamilton Academical's considerable points deductions. And it felt as though there were stages where Campbell and his brother Ian, they just didn't look like they knew how they were going to turn the situation around. And they have to summon all their know-how to stop it from happening again.
I don't think they'll be a million miles away from 10th. I think there's been a bit of a clear out at East Fife. I don't know if there's loads of players that have left, other than Colbert, but you knew he would go back anyway.
Yeah.
Of the players that have left, I don't know if there's anybody that you'd be desperate to keep. Like I know Alan Troughton, for example, was, what is he, 41 now?
Yeah.
Don't think he scored a league goal last season. Very much time for him to move on, but he's been
what a career, man. What a career.
Mikey McKenna, you would maybe want him to stick around, but again, it's not as if he was exceptional for them.
Don't know, man. I think the wages there, I'm going to imagine that's just an assumption that he was on quite heavy wages that could be appropriated elsewhere for better return for investment.
I think what their issue is at this moment in time is they've barely brought anybody in.
Yeah.
But the only thing that makes me somewhat positive about them is, well, A, they've had a pretty good League Cup campaign, and B, Dick Campbell seems to suggest that there is still money there in the budget. So it feels like there's still a good bit for them to do, and they will have the ability to maybe bring in another 4 players, for example. But as it stands, I don't see them finishing out with those bottom 2 spots, but I do think there is the option to still bring players in.
I think so. You like think so. I think that's something that Dick Campbell is. He always talks. Remember, there's times when he interviews when he says, "I've got boys lined up for like the start of the season." They're all. He's had them in the back burner, like around February time. He's got boys that are going to come in. Are they arrived already, or are we going to wait right for the end of the season to come in? Same for a lot of clubs. You'll be waiting on other teams' business to before you can really finalise your own squad. Dangerous game to play, because I think this is going to be the most cutthroat and competitive time for teams to make their moves. From the boys that they've brought in, there's some quality that's come into the team. I think like signing Derek Gaston for Stirling Albion, for instance, I think that's just a really smart signing.
Yep.
You know, Gaston, he's not quite the high flying goalkeeper he was when he was like Morton and Arbroath, when they were in the championship.
Yep.
You know, he's really, but he's still a good get. You know, he's worked very well with Dick Campbell in the past, and I think it's what I do find quite interesting about this is it's something that East Fife have relied on lone goalkeepers in the past, like Liam McFarlane, Rory Adams, and I think it's really important to
and Adams was a pest in terms of,
in
well,
terms
not
of
him, but the club was, because they could not rely on him. He was very good, but they couldn't rely on him.
It's like Matty Rollo, the sub goalie, had to play a few more games than Campbell would have wanted him.
Robbie Hemfrey, did they have him at points last season as well?
Now it's Dennis Muir.
Yep.
Robbie Henry, we've signed him there. But I think it's important you get your own goalkeeper in, your permanent goalkeeper, and I think Gaston will be able to do that no problem. They've also brought a boy in, Tom Milne from St Andrews United, I think,
who has been speaking about quite. I must admit, obviously knew nothing about him, but the early reports on him have been quite encouraging.
Aye, that said, Campbell had been keen on him for a wee while. Actually paid money for him to bring him in, and he said, "A number of managers contacted me recommending Tom, which always catches your attention. We invited him in for pre-season, and we've been really impressed with what we've seen. He settled into the group straight away and integrated really well with the players. But you're right, early reports have been...
I think he's a big unit as well, isn't he?
I think so, aye. So you see him marauding up and down the wing. They've also signed someone called, and this is, I'm making fun of the guy's name, I'm not. I'll tell you where he's come from. He's come from Chasetown, right? This is Terrell Skeen Hamilton. Come from Chasetown. They play in the Northern Premier Northern Premier League Division 1 West. That's the 8th tier of English football. And Dick Campbell's determination to sign the next Joel Nouble remains undimmed.
Even though he didn't sign Joel Nouble. It was
Joel Nouble was a Livingston player. He did not want to play for Arbroath. He wanted to play for Livingston. He was sent to Gayfield against his will, but turned out he actually enjoyed it. I don't know if Terrell Skeen Hamilton will be a good player, but it's obviously Campbell's seen enough about it. Maybe there's an agent or such and such that's been in touch with him to send him up here. But every season there's someone who'll end up
pitch up. You'll vaguely remember and will ultimately disappear.
Maybe there's a quiz to be made, like Dick Campbell signings. Like, can you? Is this a Dick Campbell signing? Aye, it's a man that's just determined one way or another to find the next Joel Nouble. I don't know Skeen Hamilton where he plays, if he's any good or not. We'll find out as the season goes ahead. But I just found it worth bringing up because Campbell is still shopping in those markets again.
I think probably defensively they're okay, even though their defence is ageing at points. So Brian Easton might be 38. Andy Monroe's maybe 33, something like that.
Good age for a centre back.
I was reliably informed that he was going to Edinburgh at the end of last season, which I thought would have been a phenomenal signing for Edinburgh. I was really surprised to hear that. Obviously that didn't happen. Whether it was just street talk or whether it was just not in the offing whatsoever, I don't know. But I think Monroe staying there is really good for them. I think up top, I like Nathan Austin, and they started the season quite strongly. He can be erratic at times, I suppose. I think in Mamadou Ba, they have somebody who I've criticised in the past, but I think he's now decent.
No, I'm not having him, man.
Nah. Even though he's linked with Dundee.
Dundee North End, more like. There's no... I don't rate the guy, man. I think he is...
He very much has an error in him, but I don't think he necessarily looks completely out of place anymore. Right.
I would need to check, and I think if you were to have a database of every single player in Scottish football last season, right, I think Mamadou Ba would be most subbed off at half-time player in the entire SPFL.
Okay, well, right, fine. I'll give you that. But I think defensively they're fine. I think up top they can do with some more reinforcements, but they should be okay. I think it's in the middle of the park where the issues lie.
Yeah, 100%. When you look at the middle of the park, they've got guys like Kieran Miller and Pat Slattery. I love Kieran Miller, quite like Pat Slattery. But when you think about what's Kieran Miller best at doing, it's being reactive. It's chasing down balls, being a pest, getting in folks' faces and breaking up the play, and then giving the ball to more technically gifted teammates. Same with Slattery to a lesser extent. He's got a bit of a wand left foot when the mood takes him. He just needs somebody who's got a bit of creativity, someone that can unlock a defence. And I think that's maybe where this keeping back the money for, because I think attacking players they come at a bit of a premium. So if the Campbells do have money, that they can go out there and sign someone that's going to give them that little bit of pizzazz that they're missing, because it does look really stodgy at the moment, just like quite a lot of legs rather than much else.
I suppose we haven't mentioned somebody who will be returning hopefully soon, and Adam Laref, but I must admit I don't know I'm not sure how far away he is.
He will be just like a new signing when he returns to the club, because he's never played at this level before, because I don't think he ever played at League One. No, he missed the entire last season, but when he was at League Two, he really came onto a game. I can still remember you and I doing a podcast, I think it was still in Albion East Fife, and he gave their fullback an absolutely terrible time of it, just like one way or the other, and both able to score and set up for others. Really came onto a game, and hopefully when he's back in business, he can show that same kind of form again, because they're the kind of fast players, direct players. They're the most fun to watch. They're the ones I want to see in my team, and I hope he can do well for them as well. Cammy Ross has come in. You mentioned Nathan Austin. They signed Cammy Ross from Bonnyrigg Rose, 27-year-old striker, scored more than 30 goals in all competitions last year.
But bearing in mind, like a goal in the lower league is like a dog year. It's worth
I'm going to read just so you know that I'm not making this up. It should be acknowledged that goals in the Lowland League are like dog ears. So I'm keen to see how he gets on. I think he's quite a bit of a different kind of player to Nathan Austin, and maybe the pair of them can dovetail well in attack, or depends what Campbell, because they're mostly a 4-2-3-1 he likes using, so maybe they might sort of alternate between one another. Can you see what Jack Healy can do?
Just about to say that. I mean, I thought that was going to be a really, really good signing for East Kilbride. Didn't work out, albeit I'm sure he scored, I think it was Starks Park, he scored an absolutely glorious goal, but didn't work out at East Kilbride. I thought it was going to be a good signing for East Fife for the second half of the campaign. Hasn't really worked out at all for him yet. There's certainly ability there. I sometimes wonder about his internally, how much he wants it at times. I think he can be quite cheeky. I think he winds up opponents. Whether he has the kind of willingness and determination to put in the kind of hard yards that is required, especially when you're not going to dominate possession. Like, you're going to have to, like East Fife, you're going to have to do a lot of work going back the way as well. Whether that's what he wants to do, I don't know. But there's definitely ability there, so hopefully he can have a successful season.
It just feels like he's a bit predictable. We've talked about players who are a bit predictable, and he's one of them. He wants to come in from the left onto his right foot and melt them, and he did that to a great degree 12 months ago against Wraith Rovers in the League Cup group stage tie. But it just feels like because he's not particularly fast, and he wants to do the same thing, to just show him to his left, because he's not going to hit the byline and chipping a ball. But there's definitely something there. I remember seeing him break through and thinking, you are definitely going to kick on. You you look really good, and it's not quite happening for him. So hopefully he can find his mojo back, get a good haircut, smarten up a bit, and show us what you can do. I mean, he did score the equaliser against St Johnstone, but Christ, was it
not great defend.
I've never seen anyone let the ball run across them inside the penalty box like that. He must have thought he was in a different part of the pitch altogether. Cheek Diabate. I really like Cheek Diabate as well. I thought he was class last season, but that is just taking your eye off the entire planet, let alone the ball.
It was like who was the Falkirk? Remember the situation with Falkirk where Denon Lewis kind of let it go at the back post?
If you didn't know any better, you think that's an absolutely sterling piece of defending there. Deary me. So we're saying that I'm going to have them, as things stand, although I do appreciate that the reinforcements are going to come in. I think they're going to finish bottom of the division.
I've got them 9th.
You got them 9th?
Yeah. But if they don't bring in additional players, there's every chance they could finish 10th. I'm saying 9th, but with better players to come.
Okay, let's see how they go. We will talk now about East Kilbride Football Club. Last season was a whirlwind for East Kilbride, promoted into the SPFL after winning the Lowland League title and then the League 2 playoffs. The Oyster Catchers followed the likes of Cove Rangers and Kelty Hearts by winning the League 2 title at the very first attempt. Mick Kennedy's side were locked in a heated battle with the Spartans at the top of the table for long spells, but after the Pilton Pistons recorded a stunning 6-0 victory at K Park at the end of January, it opened up an 8-point gap between the sides. What happened next, however, was remarkable. East Kilbride would win 12 of the remaining 15 matches. They would leapfrog the Spartans as the team approached the final straight, and they would win the division by 5 points. I know that East Kilbride might not be everyone's favourite club, and some onlookers might not particularly like Mick Kennedy's assistant Simon Ferry, but that is a superb achievement, a brilliant way to finish the season. Kilwee will be coming into this new season with virtually a brand new group of players. I think only 6 from last player's squad remain, and if I've counted correctly, 16 new players have joined. I think that's the most of any club in the SPFL so far.
I think Owen Moffat made 17 yesterday. I think he might have been their 17th signing of the summer. But I mean, I won't wrap your knuckles for just being one out. That's fine.
Okay, how do you think East Kilbride 2.0 are going to get on with their 17 players?
I do think they might be the most exciting team to watch in the SPFL next season.
For good and for bad, for them, for good and for bad reasons.
I mean, I watched the highlights of their win against Fairmont, and I thought they were absolutely fantastic. I mean, it was 3-0. It was 3-0 going on like 5 or 6. I goes, this is an extraordinary performance against a team that we know are going to be a good championship side.
It's a shame that the 2 goals, basically long passes, they kind of overshadowed that performance.
And I mean, the football they played was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, going forward, they are superb. And you wondered how they were going to make do without John Robertson, for example? Are they going to be able to threaten teams as much as they did last season? But then you've got Cam Elliott, who's absolutely filled his boots in this League Cup group section so far. I do wonder about them the other way, though. I mean, they conceded 3 against Dumbarton but scored 5. They go 3-0 up against St Mirren and kind of capitulated in the last 15 or 20 minutes or 15 or 20 minutes to go. But and lost to Cove Rangers. So it's hard to kind of think of anything definitive about them. However, I am impressed with the squad that they've put together. They are a brilliant team to watch, and I would imagine that they will be involved in high-scoring games most weeks, and I would expect them to do very well.
I agree with you on all those fronts, although I'm not 100% sold how well they'll do the final league place, and I can see them finishing 3rd, 4th, 5th or 6th. I think they'll have a good season, but what I think is a good season for East Kilbride will be very different to what like Mick Kennedy thinks is a good season for East Kilbride. He'll be coming into this division and looking to win it. I think that's you've touched on it there in your summary there. They'll be entertaining to watch. I think they'll probably be the most entertaining team in the SPFL because they'll be capable of beating teams 5-0. You could see them going to Cove, despite the fact they lost 3-2 there. But you can see them playing like Peterhead and Cove and absolutely doing a number on them, just like kind of get the ball off them, passing their way through them and sticking 2 or 3 goals past them. But easily you could imagine like them playing Ross County, taking a 2-goal lead and losing 5-2. You know, they are brittle. They are self-destructive, but my God, they are great fun to watch. Great fun to watch. I went to see their game against Dumbarton. Senny were playing away at Brecon, and I thought I'm not really going to learn much from this game. So let's go and see a team who we're not going to see as much in person this season. Let's get a wee look at them, and they're great fun. Like just give Malik Zaid the ball. He's like a wee like wind-up toy. You give him the ball, and he just, it's not always his final ball, and he can sometimes dribble the ball up his own arse, and his final ball can be lacking a wee bit. But a lot of the time when it comes off, it's great to watch. And if he is the direct replacement for John Robertson, certainly it looks like he's going to be occupying that right hand side of that attacking 3 behind the striker. You're getting a very, very different kind of player. Zaid's not going to cut inside and bang one at the top corner, but Zaid would, I think, rather than score a goal himself, Zaid would rather dribble the ball all the way to the goal line and do a funky flick for someone to run in, and that's the kind of player I think he is. And there's times watching them play, they were good. They were brittle. They were 3 up, went to 3 each before they rallied at the end to win 5-3. They will concede goals. And there's times where they almost try to like walk the ball. I know it's a bit of a cliche talking about like Arsene Wenger's Arsenal, but they do try to walk the ball into the net. A lot of the time when teams are camped back against them, it's always trying to dazzle them with quick moves. Zaid, Craig McGuffey coming in, who I think will be a really good signing for that kind of team. That's something really good. And then you've got Cammy Elliott, who I think played all right in fits and starts like last season, but he's really come into a game coming into this one. 6 goals in 4 matches. And if you think when you look through that team, if you were to say, what else do they need? Like when they brought Owen Moffat in, for instance, I don't think that was a signing they needed to make. No. I think
because they've got lots and lots of central midfielders.
Lots of attack-minded, diminutive ball-playing, attack-minded central midfielders. They've got loads. I thought like another striker would be best for them. And there might still be time for them to do that. I've absolutely no doubt, in fact, that they're not finished. I think there'll be more players coming in, maybe another couple of players coming in.
It's a shame though, because like somebody like Alexander Smith, for example.
Where does he fit into?
So it's like he was so good for Dumbarton, and you want him to move up the pyramid again, unless you're a Dumbarton fan and you want him back at Dumbarton, but you want him to move on and prove himself at a higher level. And it might be that East Kilbride is the ideal club for him, but it's just there's so many other players that kind of play a similar role. I don't know if it is a good move for him, and I do feel that there is similar to Stenny, there is a bloat to that midfield and maybe not enough forwards. And as you say, that might be remedied in the next week or two. But they are just a fascinating team to try and get your head around.
Let's talk about some of the players that they brought in. So mention Zaid. I'll talk about him because I'm really pleased to see him getting that move to East Kilbride. And I think he will fit in really well what they want to do. I remember, like, I think it was at the SPFL like Manager of the Year dinner talking to Simon Ferry. just about it. And that's why I really enjoyed the times I've met Simon Ferry, because so we both, like, he's working in the level of football that I'm interested at, and he's got a really interesting perspective. He talks so positively about the kind of football, and he was talking about guys that East Kilbride were looking at, and when he said Zaid, I was like, that's 100%. That is like a prototype East Kilbride signing, where it's a guy who is like just nimble, just nimble, that he can just take the ball in really tight areas. Folk can't get off him with his socks rolled down and his shins exposed. And it's just all that sort of stuff, just that nimbleness, that deftness of touch, the ability to just glide past players. The fact that he does have that quite low centre of gravity, that he can just basically like turn in circles, like really, really quick circles to move away from people. And then when you put in other players that are similar around that, I think he's going to flourish. I think he is the best dribbler in the lower leagues.
And he makes it look so effortless.
Yeah.
He makes it look so effortless. And it feels like he's on a completely different spectrum compared to everybody else.
Being at that game as well, you could tell the people around me, the supporters, are really, really enjoying watching so far. It's like in times like, go on, Malik. You can actually hear people like actually willing him on when he's got the ball. You didn't really hear that about any of the other players in it, or many of the other players in the team. But he's an easy player to take to. He can be frustrating, and that's the thing, trying to unlock that final ball, because it's all very well being able to dribble past three players. But when you get into that, when you've got to make the decision, what you're going to do, you're going to shoot, you're going to pop it wide, you're going to ping it back for someone. Sometimes just like it just keeps on dribbling, and it's no, we need more from you. But hopefully they can do that. And I think as well, because you're going to be playing at a higher calibre playing with a higher calibre of player that you were playing against Edinburgh City, you don't need to do it all yourself, because all that stuff we were talking about, Alexander Smith can do it, Craig McGuffey can do it, Owen Mockchrist, I'm listening to all these guys. How are you going to fit all these guys into one team? But Owen Moffat can do it. It's not just on you to create something. You are now part of a system where all those skills will complement everyone around you. They will complement you as well. So I think what East Kilbride will do will help make him better.
The thing is, though, like you could have kept going in terms of listing central midfielders like Reece Armstrong, Lewis McGrattan.
Aye, when you mentioned when Reece Armstrong got let go by Airdrie, the first thing I thought to myself was, he's going to go East Kilbride. He is going to East Kilbride. He is the East Kilbride coded. I think if you were to cut Reece Armstrong in half, you would see like East Kilbride written in the bottom of his rib cage.
Has Mick Kennedy been quite naive in terms of how he's put the squad together? Like, as his style of play a bit naive, and as how because it doesn't feel like they've got enough ball winners in the middle of the park.
I suppose the ball winners you've got two to pick from. Bear in mind, you've got a lot to pick from. Ali Spalding will probably be your number. I think that's what he's best at. But you've got guys that can win the ball, but are maybe better in other areas of the pitch, like Finlay Gray, who's coming from Stennismuir, Zhao Baldi, who's been there a couple of years. So you've got guys that can do that. It's just that I think that on the pitch, you've got 5 midfield positions, your 2 holders, and your 2 number 6s, your number 8s, whatever you want to call them, and then your 3 in behind Cammy Elliott. And you must have about, I need to go and check, right?
They might have 8 options.
You might have about 8 options, maybe more options to play. And it's just how do you manage that? You don't want to think guys come in and then just are just let go. To go
Which, to be fair, we've already seen 3 times in 2 summers. So I wouldn't be surprised if it maybe does happen with another player or 2.
8, 9. I'll go read these out to you, right? So these are the midfielders: Ali Spalding, Lewis McGrattan, Zhao Baldi, Malik Zaid, Craig McGuffey, Finlay Gray, Alexander Smith, Reece Armstrong, Owen Moffat. And there's Keir Foster's more of a winger, so he's a bit different to that, so I won't include him.
So it's not possible to keep all of those players happy
unless you play a 1-9 formation.
And he's not used that formation so far. Not yet.
So far.
Not yet.
That is, but I find that really interesting. I like Reece Armstrong. Oh, sorry, I forgot to include Reece Armstrong, so that's 10. Sorry. So let me count that one again. So I'm going to count this. A terrible podcasting. Ali Spalding, Lewis McGrattan, Zhao Baldi, Malik Zaid, Craig McGuffey, Finlay Gray, Alexander Smith, Reece Armstrong, Owen Moffat. No, it's 9. There you go. 9 players for 5 positions. But that's like most teams. These all feel quite similar.
It's not like most teams, though, because we wouldn't say that about anybody else. We haven't said about anybody else so far, apart from maybe Stenny. Listen, can we have some of your estimated ball playing midfielders, please? We could really do them. I suppose though, like Finlay Gray's very different to Malik Zaid.
Yeah,
of
them are
course.
different to Zhao Baldi. Like Reece Armstrong even feels different to those kind of guys. Ali Spalding feels different, but I mean, they're all a different kind of players, but where do you fit them all into this team?
I do think though the players behind them, I think like defensively, and I think in terms of the goalkeeper, I think that's probably fine.
I find Shea Kelly quite interesting. I was on the BBC Sports Scotland Daily Football podcast, and we did basically doing a review of like Leagues 1 and League 2. We had half an hour to do it. So I was like, if you listened to the Terrace's Lower League podcast in the past, I need at least like 4 hours to get all this out my system here. We were talking about Shea Kelly, and I said if I had any doubts about what East Kilbride are going to do, it's with the goalkeeper, because he lost his place at Dumbarton last season. He made a couple of like reasonably high profile-ish mistakes that led to goals. And then when he dropped out of the team, Aidan Rice came in on loan from Celtic, and Aidan Rice just looked a lot better than him. I think he was signed because he's more of a footballer than a goalkeeper. But he has made some saves, and on top of that as well, his passing, as we saw in that Dunfermline game, really on point. When I was at the game against Dumbarton, the fans behind me were jokingly referring to him as the quarterback, and you see how high up the park he is. I mean, that's what East Kilbride want to do. They want to basically suffocate teams by pushing up as high as possible, and he must be about 40 yards from his goal line, just there in case any balls come over the top, he can take it and pop it over to someone. So how good a goalkeeper he is, we're going to base it on what we saw at Dumbarton. Maybe a lot to do in terms of that regard, but in terms of what he brings tactically to the East Kilbride team, probably an upgrade on Craig Hepburn from last year.
Yeah, quite possibly. And then in front of that, I think not that I was a huge fan of him in the Championship, but I do think that Darragh O'Connor is a kind of decent upgrade on what they had in there last season. I don't think his distribution is particularly, in fact his passing's dreadful. I'm not even going to be polite about it. But as a defender, he was probably okay. So at League One, he will be more than adequate.
Aye, they've also got Aaron Steele in there. I think Steele is a good, like, because he can play in two positions. He can play at right back, he can play at centre back, so he's got that degree of versatility there. I don't think he's all that good on the ball. In fact, he's probably one of the players you just you say like, can I just take this? I'll do this. Leave it to me. I'll do this.
As long as Darragh O'Connor isn't turning up, they're in big trouble.
But I find him to be quite error prone. Became a bit of an ongoing joke amongst like the Steny fans that Agent Steele, he got the nickname because when he went, he'd had quite a prosperous loan spell from Stennismuir on loan from Arbroath like 2 years ago, in 24-25, to the point where when Stennismuir were directly competing with Arbroath at the top of the table, it really made their best interest to take him back and recall him. And they played him in a game, it was a televised game mid-February on BBC Alba. He made a mistake that allowed Blair Alston to score. And then subsequently after that, when he was playing for Peterhead last season, he would like header the ball out of play and stuff, and like make quite like not quite as grievous an error as he made in that match there, but just like mistakes. And I always feel he's just a wee bit scratchy at times. So he's a big player and he's a big unit, and in terms of pure defending, he's a good player. But for what East Kilbride need, maybe not quite what they're looking for, but we'll see how he goes. I think like Jamie Hamilton's a bit of a better option in terms of ball playing. But then if you look at the wide areas, like Sean Fagan's just turned into a really good player. You know, I remember when they signed the Albion Rovers captain, it just felt like this is when they won the Lower League. Was it the first time? The second time they signed him midway through the season, and it felt as though you were just accumulating players at that point, which they seem to have a habit of doing. But Sean Fagan's really good. Just turned into like a really good defender. Really, he's not the most like flashy in terms of like going forward, but you don't really need to do that when you've got Zaid and McGuffey and Armstrong and all that, like doing all that sort of stuff. Yeah. You can just sit back and just defend. And I think he does it really capably.
And it was interesting as well in terms of when we started to have some questions about the direction that the East Kilbride were going in. I suppose there was two things in terms of Mick Kennedy did change his style of play, so he probably did play a bit more direct.
He could do
because there was so many times where they kind of shot themselves in the foot, and in January it felt like they were able to bring additions in.
Yeah.
So even if things aren't necessarily going to plan in terms of challenging the top four, for example, I would imagine that Kennedy will be able to. Well, he's proven now he can change it up. And you would imagine he'll be backed again in January if need be.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, if they do need to I think it's just something he really enjoys doing. It's just like player trading. I think he might just really enjoy schmoozing people. You know, just like talking to folk and just like being charming and selling things, like, you know, like selling the club to them and all. I think there's maybe like something quite intoxicating about that, and he really enjoys doing it. And he's done it well here with the group of players that he's brought, like Andrew Kyle coming in on a permanent basis from Celtic at fullback. I liked when I saw him last season, and again, like quite fast and good at going up and down the line, but on top of that, quite comfortable coming in field and linking play like that. Just like, I think every player in that team's like quite good in the ball. Like Craig McGuffey, you know, I think that he is a very, very good football player, but I think there's times that it's probably maybe pockmarked his career where when things aren't going against him, his head can drop and he can maybe like drift out of games.
I said last summer that him signing for Peterhead was probably a bad sign, because as much as I rated him as a player, generally wherever he goes, they don't have a particularly good season. However, last season Peterhead
had a good season.
Completely proved me wrong there.
And seeing him, he's like resides in the number 10, he's wearing number 11, and just seeing them just dot around the pitch, really, really impressive. It's just, how do you fit them all in? Just some other notes here. They signed an enormous defender called Chris McKenna, who'd spent 5 years playing United States.
He's signed from the Northern Colorado Hailstorm, an incredible team name.
He looks like the offspring from Alien Romulus. He's a big boy.
That's not a positive.
Oh, he's a big boy. Like he's
no, but he looks like.
He's just really tall. I remember seeing that in the cinema. That frightened me. That bit.
The end to that film was dreadful.
Alien Romulus.
Aye.
You reckon?
Yeah.
What made it dreadful? I quite liked it.
Just because it was that kind of alien human
hybrid.
I've
seen it before.
But I mean, you've seen everything from that film in previous Alien films. Almost every single thing was a callback to something else in the franchise. I enjoyed it until the last 20 minutes.
Oh, the bit, in fact, I thought the film was quite good, but the bit that actually, in terms of world building, I actually was really enjoying it. But then the bit where they digitally recreated Ian Holmes' face.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You didn't need to do that.
No, just use a different robot.
I just use a different actor. It's fine.
And the bit where, I can't believe, well, then a lift shaft or something, I can't remember what happened. But it was a robot had the machine gun and he goes, "Get away from her, you bitch." And I was like, oh, come on now.
Because she says that in Aliens.
Yes.
She says that in Aliens.
Absolutely does.
What's really interesting about East Kilbride as well is just the team. I think it's important to talk about the players that have left as well, because it's like Jack Leach, Jordan McGregor, Lewis Spence, they've all moved on, they've all joined clubs in League Two. All really good players, and all players who have played a really important role in taking East Kilbride from the Lowland League into League One. But it just feels like just the club's outgrown them a wee bit. Like,
it was interesting when who was it now? Remember when Jordan McGregor joined Edinburgh? And I think there might have been some chat that, oh yeah, Edinburgh have managed to outbid East Kilbride for now. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But I think I was like, I'd find that really, really surprising. But I think ultimately what it was that Mick Kennedy very much had his sights set on East Kilbride version 2.0, that he was essentially going to bring in a raft of players, most of whom are probably an upgrade on what has got him to this point. I have to say, kind of, well, fair enough.
That's the way it works. It's you look at players like Rome, probably the best example of that. We talked to him earlier right at the start of this podcast. Arbroath, Falkirk. We were talking about Arbroath. We talked about Falkirk. And the guys like Gary Oliver and Alfie Agaman and Sean Mackey and Tom Lang and Aidan Nisbet, all guys that have been phenomenal players for Falkirk in terms of reinvigorating the club, re-establishing them as a top flight side, getting them, maybe not re-establishing, but getting them into the top flight. But now you're in the top flight, very different expectations, very different demands. And John was like, I don't think these players can meet the demands. It doesn't mean you're bad players. It's just you're not. We've reached a different stratosphere and we can't take you with us. And it feels like that is the same with East Kilbride. It doesn't diminish what Jack Leach has done, Lewis Spence. I mean, the fact that those guys that played, I imagine they played most games last season. Like Jack Leach was the captain. I think him and Simon Ferry are particularly close as well. So I think that's quite a difficult conversation to have, to move on players like that. But they don't feel worse off from it. I think even like this is something that you talk to folk at K Park around you. They actually think, we talked about John Robertson, folk were actually kind of saying it like, I think we're a better team without him there, because as we touched on there when we talked about the Rovers, you could just give the ball to him and he could just shoot and score from it. And it's I think if you imagine a football player, like, have you ever played five-a-sides when you've got a much better team? You've got in your team, you've got a much better player than everyone else.
So you just give the ball.
So you just give the ball, so you don't have to do anything.
Mhm.
It's basically your problem-solving skills, and it's very difficult because the problem-solving skills, it's all happening really quickly. And if you don't have the legs to match what's going on in your head, then you're kind of useless. And that's why I'm playing five-a-side indoor football on a Friday afternoon and not playing for East Kilbride in League One. But your problem-solving skills are just not there because it's just that's the easiest thing to do. Just give the ball to someone that's really good at it, and they can figure it out for themselves. But if you take them out and you've got the impetus for you to go and do something, I think it makes you a better player. And so, in consequence, it makes you a better player, makes the team better. So
I also wonder if it's, in fairness, I have no idea what John Robertson's like, but from watching East Kilbride, both in the flesh and via highlights, I would imagine he's a difficult player to play with because of his negative reactions to almost everything. Even when it's his fault, he has a negative reaction to somebody else. Even when if it's just like a nicer place to be, potentially, without him in the building.
I mean, I think that they've spoken. I'm sure I've seen Mick Kennedy write stuff on social media about him, like quite like glowingly about John Robertson, and like how he's he's a pain in the arse, but like what a guy, a great relationship with him. And it's I suppose what I'm trying to say here. Probably is. Like, I know football's like ultra competitive and all that, and it can bring out like folk can squabble with each other, like folk are like passionate about it, and that can manifest itself in different ways. But I remember the game. You'll have seen it yourself. You've probably sat in the same spot as me and seen it. Inverness Caledonian Thistle this time last year. He wanted a ball over the top from Magnus McKenzie, but McKenzie went short, and turns around and he's fucking giving the guy, like giving the young man like a bit of pelters. And the passage of plays moved on, and then then the ball goes out of play for a throw, and he's turning around to McKenzie again and giving him a hard time. It was like, it's just.
I mean, the game I went to at the end of last season at Dumbarton, East Kilbride, it was I'm sure it was the second last day of the season, so their win at Dumbarton more or less assured them of the title. I think they'd only lose on goal difference or something. That would have taken something quite silly. And Robertson was having a good game. But I started counting how many temper tantrums he had, and it was like 5 or 6 in the first half alone. I was like, goodness me, you are exhausting. And I'm just sitting here watching. So I can, to have to put up with that on a weekly basis, that must be a difficult.
Yeah. One other departure that's important to talk about is Tim Scott. He was signed for the club and then immediately released by the club to go and join Clyde. News article from when he signed from Queen's Park at the beginning of June. East Kilbride boss Mick Kennedy says he expects new signing Tim Scott to make such an impact that he'll be amazed if the winger is still at K Park next season.
And he's right.
He was absolutely right about that. Absolutely right about that. I think they're a really interesting team to talk about. Really interesting to talk about East Kilbride because, as you say, probably the most like captivating side. I think if you go and watch the game, you will not find it boring. You will not find it dull. I don't particularly enjoy passing football for the sake of passing football, but there's something about watching East Kilbride.
There is a purpose about what they're doing.
What I was going to say though, there's some East Kilbride that just kind of, if this goes wrong, this could be a lot of fun. There was, against that Dumbarton game, there's a bit where they tried to play the ball out from the back. I think it'd gone to 3-2 at this point, so folk were a wee bit nervy as Dumbarton were coming back into it. And they were trying to pass the ball out from the back, and like everyone just is all this like edge of the seat stuff is like it's going to Shea Kelly just in his goal line, and he's passed on as somebody's coming to closing down. So it can be quite hear him, scare him. But I find them really interesting. It's like, we said when we introduced this section, I think people who spend probably too much time online, they might not necessarily like Mick Kennedy, they might not necessarily like Simon Ferry. I've met the pair of them. I think they're both class. The times that there was SPFL dinners, I find Simon Ferry like brilliant company, and I think they'd rather lose a game like 4-3 giving it a go than it finishing like 0-0. And I think there's something really commendable about that. And some folk just won't like them for their own reasons, but I'm really looking forward to see how this team goes on. And I think that when I'm not at Steny and not at Edinburgh City games, I'm going to try and make it along to K Park.
But you don't think they'll finish top 4?
No, I'm talking myself into it. No. I'm going to go because there's another team who are similar, so we'll come on and talk about that. I think just maybe slightly ahead of them. Maybe just slightly ahead of them.
I I think they will finish top 4.
See how we get on. Right, Shaughan. My goodness, where to start with? Hamilton Academical. Right, I've got loads here, so maybe if you want to go for a piss just now, man, but I'll still be going by the time I finish this. The club had suffered a 15-point deduction at the tail end of the 2024-25 season for breaching a number of SPFL rules, and this punishment would see them drop to the bottom of the Championship and relegated into League One. And although the club had a decent group of players on paper, they were an absolute shambles behind the scenes. The club moved to Broadwood in Cumbernauld following a dispute with the owners of New Douglas Park in Hamilton, and over the course of last season they'd suffer a number of points deductions, 21 in total, for failing to properly register amateur players. That was only 6 points. That should have been a lot more. Failing to hold a bronze licence and failing to pay their players in time. John Rankin, the glue that held everything together, departed the club in November, and his assistant Darry McKinnon took his place. The team finished in 9th place and ultimately stayed up after defeating Forth Athletic and then Clyde, of all teams, in the playoffs. But, and this is class, brighter times finally are ahead. Morley Sports Management, headed up by Rob Edwards, took control of the club in early January, and they have done their very best to correct their trajectory, and that included returning to New Douglas Park for the season ahead, and that's huge in the club's immediate and long-term futures. There was a statement posted on the club's website a couple of weeks ago that read, "We have had significant and unimaginable challenges from day one, but the fact that we sit here now playing back in Hamilton with a competitive squad, strong off-field management, improved governance, taxes and pensions up to date, and an air of excitement around the club and the local area is a testament to the hard work of everybody at the football club. We have been open, transparent and honest about our challenges with the SFA, the SPFL and all other regulatory bodies, and we appreciate the understanding and support shown while we work through the challenges we faced. By no means is the club officially saved, that there remain challenges and ongoing matters relating to the historic administration that we will continue to face head on and communicate where necessary." And the team appear to have recruited quite well. They did well in the League Cup group stages. They lost only to Kilmarnock, and I think they look in reasonably decent shape for a tilt at promotion.
Yeah, same. I am very, very surprised at the look of their squad. Basically,
Yeah.
I presumed getting back to Hamilton is amazing, but ultimately, like a couple of weeks ago, I think they updated that they'd sold about 280 season tickets, and bear in mind the last couple of seasons they were selling about 80. I was like, right, well, surely what is going to happen this season is you're going to have a very, very kind of cheaply put together squad. It's going to be a lot of young players. Darry McKinnon is going to have his hands full, and if they can stay up, but ultimately start to bring in the kind of local population again, that would be a success. Instead, I would say that they have put together actually quite a talented League One squad with a number of players that I did not expect them to be able to bring in. And as much as I don't think they will be able to challenge for the title, if anybody can do it, it will be Aki's.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think that the challenge for them, I agree with all the points you're making. There are some players in that team that they brought in, it's like, oof, that looks like a really good piece of business. And if it can all click, then I do think they can give Ross County, I presume that's the team we're talking about who are going to win the division. Sorry for spoiling that section of the podcast. If they can, if it all can all click, they can give Ross County a run for their money. For me, there are two question marks. One, how good a manager is Darry McKinnon? The other question mark, there's a lot of players in there who have been at the club for a long time. Maybe you say like jobbing professionals, like guys like Stephen Hendry, Lee Kildare, for instance, Tony Gallagher. Not a long time, I've been at the club for like 2 years or so, and I've kind of gone through a bit of hardships. Are they in a position where they can rouse themselves from being sort of like dragged down to the level? Because there were times last season where Hamilton looked really, really bad, particularly towards the tail end of the season. Can these players now rouse themselves and find the level that they were able to perform to earlier in their careers? And if we can find out how good a manager McKinnon is, and if he is good enough, and the players can relight that fire under their bellies, I do think they've got a good chance. But those are two questions that I need answered.
No, that's a valid point actually, because now that you mention it, I remember like we'd mentioned it on the podcast, but it was an interview with Darry McKinnon, and he was talking about, I'm sure they'd went away somewhere and got hammered, and he was talking about, it was quite a short interview, but he was talking about the fact that he had brought a lot of stuff back to the club, like maybe like having lunches prepared for them.
Inverness, did they go into Inverness?
Must have been, because I'm sure he talked about the journey as well, an overnight stay. And I can't remember what the score was, but basically he was raging afterwards. But he also mentioned that he felt that although they had loads of difficulties, they still had a lot of experience in the squad, and ultimately he felt that they weren't getting enough, like kind of almost bang for their buck in terms of the experienced players. So that's a valid point. You would like to think that the fact that there is now such an air of positivity around the team, that might get a wee bit more out of them, but it's a valid point actually.
Yeah, and he's got a long-term contract as well. I think it was a 3-year contract that he signed at the tail end of last season, which is a great show of faith from the managers. But I mean, like, give him a rolling contract. Let's see how we get on. But in terms of the recruitment, yeah, when you kind of look at the team, if you look at their best 11, you're kind of like, oof, that's actually really impressive. I think there's 2 players in particular that I'm really confident will be absolute standouts at this level. Andy Ryan and Stuart Bannigan, the 2 players. Now, Ryan actually played for Hamilton. This is his second spell with the club. He had a really prolific time in Northern Ireland with Larne. 70 goals in 121 appearances. He scored the goal that won them a place in the UEFA Conference League, so a bit of a legend with the club. He'd been an excellent striker at this level in the past with Airdronians. That was in 2016, 2017, so that had been about 9 years ago. But nevertheless, getting someone like that, and he scored his first goal for the club since returning against Elgin City in a 5-0 win on Saturday. But getting him back, that's a kind of like, ooh, that's a really good piece of business. I thought if he was to return to Scotland, I thought he'd be playing like for like Queen's Park or Morton or someone like that. Or maybe not Morton, but you know what I mean.
Same, and it's weird because it seems to be like loads of players that go from Scotland to Ireland, achieve nothing, and then come back to Scotland quite quickly after. Whereas Ryan, that's not the case at all. Like, he's went over there, as you say, a bit of a legend. But considering when Shaw departed, and I know we don't always compliment Shaw, but the fact he scored so many goals, you're like, right, goodness me, that is going to be very, very difficult to replace. I don't think they could have made a better signing to replace him than Andy Ryan.
Aye, and Stuart Bannigan as well. I think he's the other 2 marquee signings. We touched on him earlier, where I think he had done kind of maybe his time at Thistle. It was kind of like he'd been there a long time. Maybe a change of scenery would have done him well. Going to Ayr United, a team who had spent a period of time on loan. I think he was fine last season, but fine's maybe not what Ayr United are needing at this stage. I think they've maybe got bigger aspirations in the current circumstances. But my goodness, like dropping down into League One on paper, that's a really good signing for that level.
It also feels like the kind of player that Darian McKinnon was, like that kind of the whole kind of almost like dog of war type of player. It feels like Bannigan is that kind of player as well. So I think McKinnon will be delighted to get him on board and scored a couple of goals. That's very unusual.
He scored a superb goal against Celtic. He got a brace against them, and one of them was hit from about 25 yards. It was quite funny in his post-match interview. He was like, basically, like, don't get used to that. You're not going to see that kind of thing happening again. But even though he's kind of advancing in years, the sharpness in the mind about, if you've got, I keep saying this about like older players, and I hope I don't mean to repeat myself, but if you get like quicker players around them that can move, he can just basically act as a metronome in the middle of the park and just shuttle the ball around, and then it allows you to really try to unlock the players at the top end of the pitch. Because imagine with Andy Ryan going through the middle, Stuart McKenzie on one side, and Dom Thomas coming in from Airdronians, that if that can come together, that's really exciting. But we need to see, like, Stuart McKenzie was one of those players I was talking about who's basically been dragged down to the level he's at. I mean, the guy was at Leeds United as a youngster. He was good enough at Motherwell. He showed enough promise at Motherwell to go down to Leeds. We need to see that kind of player, and you're not a League One. Prove to me you're not a League One player. You and Gallagher and Hendry and Kildare, prove to me you're not League One players. Dom Thomas, prove to me that you are a better player than the one we saw at Ayr United and Airdrie last season.
And over and above that as well, I thought Aaron Comrie seems like a really good sign. I'm surprised that that they were able to bring him on board. And then somebody who hasn't necessarily proven themselves yet. I suppose there's still question marks over him. But like Taylor Sutherland's route in the last couple of seasons has been really interesting. The fact that he was at Clyde, I don't think Clyde fans were overly enamoured with him. And I think when he left, I don't think they were that fussed. And I think they were confused that he would go from Clyde in League Two and not really making a mark to Montrose. But Montrose, I thought he had a really good tail end this season with Montrose. So very interesting to see how he gets on at a club that probably will have lots of the ball and create a number of chances, you would imagine.
And where he fits in as well, where do you think he's going to play? You think he's going to, who's he going to play? Because I think that when you think of Ryan, Thomas and McKinsey. I think that's going to be your front three, if that's the kind of what McKinnon wants to do. Do you want to play him as a number 10, like he's a bit more withdrawn from Ryan?
I think he maybe steps in for Ryan if he is unavailable for whatever reason, or he comes off the bench to replace him, or if there maybe is a wide player who isn't available, we can maybe start out wide. I don't necessarily see him as a starter, but I think he has a very good substitute to bring on, or could potentially be a really good squad player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Just going back to Thomas, that's a player. I just hope we can see that form they showed when he was the Queen's Park captain, because I think that last year was a bit of a difficult one for him, going in at Ayr United. And I think that when he moved back there from Derry after his spell, you think, well, that's a great signing, because you're expecting to get the same player that you saw at the Spiders. But Scott Brown, for whatever reason, didn't use him. I think that was a stick that Ayr United supporters used to beat Brown with. And you think, well, he's gone to Airdrie. That's him. This will be him. He'll be free. And then he got a couple of goals against Morton,
and that was it.
And didn't really do much. I think they were quite happy to see. I think Airdrie were quite happy to see a lot of the back of the players from the season. But Thomas was one. I think they just you promised us a lot and you didn't give us very much. So hopefully he can do something different at Hamilton.
Do you think he will? Because he's dropping down a level. I expect Hamilton to do very well. They're probably going to have a lot of the ball. I think that suits him down to the ground.
I think he's well, like going, even dropping back, for even staying in the attacking positions. Well, they're all really smart signings. What about Calvin Orsi signing for them? Surprised?
Yes, and when they brought him in, I was like, at that point in the summer, I wondered how good a squad Hamilton were going to put together. I do wonder if he is somebody who may miss out. I think he's got a good player to watch without necessarily producing an end product. I don't expect to see him too often this season.
I think if you're looking at like pure goals and assists, don't look at Calvin Orsi, because you're not going to see any of them there. I think there's not the old conundrum that I think folk like, maybe if you try him out as a striker and you do it and it doesn't work, so you put him further back, and then you think, he's got something. He's trying him as a striker again. Let's see how it goes, and it just doesn't work. Cammy Blues.
Again, surprised that they were able to bring him on board. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he's necessarily somebody who can play for a team that is looking to get promoted from the Championship. But like last season's Morton's team, for example, actually had quite a good season. He's probably played quite well for the last couple of seasons actually at Morton. I think that's his level. So again, I'm surprised that Hamilton were able to bring him on board in the third tier.
Yeah, to suppose the idea of getting just something different for them. And that's I saw concern in Pie and Bovril that they were worried that the club might be following similar mistakes by paying a lot of money for these players, and that's what ultimately led them to the financial hardships that they were in. But I don't know, man, I just get them feeling for like Rob Edwards and the Morley Sports management. Maybe it's just the communication. It just seemed like really straight, and it just doesn't feel like that.
So in terms of everything you know about him, from what he's achieved, is it Haverfordwest?
Yes.
In Wales.
We were down there for a pre-season friendly against them.
Well, it was really, really good. And for what he achieved as the promoting wrestling, it seems like
more about the wrestling.
It seems like he knows what he's doing. But I must admit, like in terms of the squad that's been put together, so I went to the 1-1 draw with Wraith Rovers.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought of them.
It's quite a stodgy game. They were probably the better team on the day, so I was impressed by them. It was quite a dull game. There wasn't an abundance of chances, but they deserved the bonus point, I would say, over the piece. The thing I was disappointed by from Hamilton was that it kind of occurred to me, and like the Monday before the game, I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is Hamilton's first game back in Hamilton, and that's quite exciting. I wonder if they get like a really good turnout. There wasn't really. Like, see if they've sold, say, 300 odd season tickets, I don't think there was too many people just turning up to pay on the day. And I know it's only the League Cup, I know it's only Wraith Rovers, but I do wonder how the board at the club have. I wonder if they are unpleasantly surprised at the amount of people they've had through the gate so far, and how achievable what they want to do with this squad is with 300 season ticket holders.
But I think there's an acknowledgement that they have a lot of work to do. The club has a lot of work to do to mend the relationships, the broken relationship with people in the town, people who feel just like let down by Hamilton
But surely you can't do that by speculating to accumulate. And it almost feels like they are, but without knowing too much about it. And everything seems very positive, and all the kind of noises coming from the club seem fine at this moment in time. So there is no reason, based on what we've read and seen so far, to worry about it. But I don't understand how what you presume they're paying for some of these players are sustainable with the gates that they're that so far. But I appreciate it's only the League Cup.
Put a winning team together and people will come and watch. If you build it, they will come. Not my words, words of Kevin Costner. Aye, that's imagine that'd be difficult. Disappointing because coming back, if you advertise well, this is the first game back in Hamilton, and you do get quite a shy crowd, then that would be disappointing. But like I say, I do appreciate there'll be people who are just like really suspicious of Hamilton. And so I think there was a really good podcast that Craig Fowler recorded with Brendan Cockhill. It's really good. A lot of the time Fowler and Brendan Cockhill have spoken together is really negative because Hamilton have just been in crisis for the last the last couple of years, and it's always like entertaining to listen to because it's not your club, so you can kind of rubberneck and just like Bono, tonight thank God it's them instead of you. But for the first time in a long time, it was the first time I heard Brendan be able to talk positively about the football club and talk positively about the direction of travel they were going in, and positively about the group of players in the park and how things are and what the future holds for them. And that's class because I think they're not out of the woods yet, as you saw in that statement. There's still a lot of work to be done to try and stave off administration. But if I was a Hamilton fan, I'd be tentatively encouraged, like somebody had been leaving like nuts outside my foot. Like you want to tease out a shy squirrel, like leaving nuts out front of my door. I'm taking a look there. I'm keen. I'm interested.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. I think they'll have a good season, not quite good enough to really challenge for the title. I'm not saying that they'll be a million miles away, but I do think they'll finish second.
Yeah. It's just how good a manager Darren McKinnon is. It felt as though there was a degree of sympathy last season because you're a hard act to follow, or seemingly hard act to follow, in John Rankin. And there were times, like you mentioned that game against Inverness, I saw them when Steny beat them 3-0 at Oakview. Ross Taylor and Kane Ritchie-Hosler had a superb game against them, and they just looked miles off. These experienced players that we're talking about, they had to, as very much make do and mend. Like Stephen Hendry was playing like as a winger, which is never his position in a million years, but they just looked like it looked as though they'd lost something. I do appreciate it was difficult. They just looked like they'd lost their edge a wee bit, and he wasn't able to get it. So
I suppose this is the season to judge.
Yeah, definitely. It's like there's a lot of stuff like how good a manager is John Rankin. We'll find out this season. How good a manager is Darren McKinnon. We'll find out this season. Second place. Second place. Okay. Let's talk about Montrose. Of all the clubs to have competed in League One last season, Montrose were probably the least interesting. The season was bookended by short runs of poor form. There was a period between October and November when they lost 5 games in a row and they conceded the most goals in the division, 67. Everything else was largely okay. Too good to involve themselves with the nonsense at the bottom of the division, but not quite good enough to challenge the Queen of the South in Alloa Athletic for the final playoff places. And that saw the team finish the campaign in 6th place. Now, on the final day of last season, when Montrose took on Stennismuir at Links Park, I was heading into the ground and bumped into Stuart Petrie at the entrance. And Stuart Petrie, we've been lucky enough to spend time with him. Absolute class guy, great company. He was waiting to see his grandchild, who was coming along with his own child for the day. And I bumped into him and was having a wee chat with him for a couple of minutes while I was waiting. And while he'd been fairly unenthused about how the season had been, and just he was like, well, it's one of those things. He was super excited about the upcoming campaign. He said the club had pushed the boat out for the season ahead. And what does that boat look like? It looks like a small but quietly impressive core of players all joining en masse, and they could be in for a shout of promotion if it all comes together.
Yeah, I have been, because I wasn't involved in that conversation, I cannot believe how good a standard of player they've brought in, because for the last couple of years it very much feels like they've been cutting back. And then when they're bringing in like Shaughan Byrne, and okay, Jamie Barjonas is no world beater, but I think at League One level he's pretty good. I think Declan Glass, if he can be fit, is a very, very good player at League One and can kind of prize defences open. I think he's very, very talented. But then somebody like Gary Oliver. Now, I think if Gary Oliver, and Shaughan Byrne to a degree as well, Gary Oliver could surely have got a game for a team in the Championship. Like I remember in January when Wraith were desperate for a forward, I was hoping they would bring in Gary Oliver. And as you've already mentioned, you might end the season with 3 league goals, but it generally makes everybody else round about him a bit
totally
better
agree.
and knits the midfield to the forward line. So I think that the players that they've brought in, very, very impressive, but it feels like they've got a very good starting 11, and then once you kind of scratch the surface, there's not much below it.
That's exactly what I've got down here as well, man. I'm going to read you this. I'm going to read this so you know. Good starting 11, a couple of injuries and absences, however, and it might look exposed. Unbelievable. I can assure you this is Shaughan and I do this independently and then come together. The talk about the players that have come in first. Gary Oliver, talked about him when we were discussing Stennismuir. I'd have loved him to come in at Stenny. I think he'd have been ideal. Just a player who will earn his place in Falkirk folklore for being part of the team that eventually got them out of the hell of League One and won the championship at the first time of asking. That's incredible, and that's sort of stuff that folk will be talking about for years to come. It was an amazing achievement for Falkirk, and Oliver played its part. But as we discussed just a couple of minutes ago, Falkirk are at a stage now where they've outgrown someone like Gary Oliver. He's probably not good enough for the Premiership. And I was actually looking at his stats. Like, he played 8. He appeared in 8 games. He played for 112 minutes across those 8 games. That's like barely a game of football in its own. So I don't know if there'd been, I can't imagine there'd be a falling out between him and McGuigan after that, but just like McGuigan just maybe told him at the start, like, we're not going to use you, you're only playing special circumstances. And those special circumstances,
but we don't have any.
A King Ralph situation where all our other strikers are killed. That's when you'll get your shot. But like, if you know, Falkirk's loss is very much Montrose's gain. I think a lot of teams actually their losses is Montrose's gain, because he's a very, very positive player. You know, will press from the front. You know, will keep the team on the front foot just through that personality and that desire to get the ball back. But I think on top of that, he's not just a runner. He's not just going to close the ball down. I think he's got the quality to match his tenacity. You know, he's not going to score goals. You joked about 3 goals. I think we can hit 3 goals. We're doing well. You know.
A classic campaign.
You know, he's never hit double figures before, but I think he is the kind of player that can make the team around him better. And if you've got someone that is selfless as that, maybe players that aren't like that, maybe Declan Glass or Jamie Barr-Jonas, then that keeps the team on the front foot, allows the flair players to do their thing, and keeps the team going.
It also, it feels like now, and we went on about it for so long, about eventually he's going to have to come to a point where he kind of rips his team up and brings in so many kind of fresh bodies in, with Andrew Steeves leaving the club and Terry Masson, Kerr Waddle, I suppose, as well, went to Dundee North End. It feels like that has more or less happened now.
Can I read something out to you? We've spoken a number of times about how Stuart Petrie needed to turn his team around. I think he's done it this season. This is probably more revolution than evolution. Unbelievable. Kerr Waddle, Terry Masson, Andy Steeves. I mean, and Terry Masson, my goodness, like, what a career. Brilliant. That's that Montrose's all-time record appearance holder. Brilliant moment at the tail end of last season when he broke the record. Les Barr, the previous record appearance holder, handing him over a signed jersey. Just a really, really nice moment there. Like Les Barr handing over and just gripping on to just, here's the fella that broke my record. Terry. But between them, they've made more, between the 3 of them, more than 30 years of service to Montrose. I don't know how, if you repeat that. I can't think of any other clubs where you've got so many players that have been so much time together.
No, it's incredible. And like they've had
maybe Arbroath, maybe. I suppose you've got like David Gold, Colin Hamilton, Tam O'Brien, Scott Stewart, maybe there.
And similar to Arbroath, but not to the same extent. Legends because of the success they've had at the club as well. Because bearing in mind, like, Montrose were a team that nearly dropped out of the leagues. They were in the bottom tier for, what was it? I mean, how many years was it? It was 20 odd years.
Something like that, yeah.
Managed to win that league, and then on so many occasions in League One have either finished in the playoffs or almost finished in the playoffs. And when you think about where Montrose were when Stuart Petrie joined the club, I mean, that's you can forget what an incredible achievement that is.
It's amazing, man. And one of the guys, I don't think he's going to play much this season, but Sean Dillon, who'd agreed a new 1-year contract with the club, this will be his 10th season at Links Park, and I wonder if any other player's done this, to get 2 testimonials with 2 different clubs, because he got that at Dundee United, I'm going to imagine Montrose will say, because Montrose seem to be quite good to their players like Paul Watson, Graham Webster, Andy Steves. They all got testimonials. I don't think he's going to play much. I think they've brought in centre backs. I think basically like Sean McGuinty is going to be him and what's the big boy that's playing next to him? Aidan Quinn, aye, big sort of jolly farmer. He kind of looks like a farmer's son, Aidan Quinn. But he's going to play ahead of him. But Dylan, just like fantastic. He's still in ridiculous shape. The age of like 42. He's still built like like ripped.
And has he been taking the team for one or two of the League Cup games? Or have I completely...
I don't know. He's a coach there. He's a player coach now, so he might have taken...
It was just a red... I don't know if maybe Stuart Petrie was unavailable or if this was an agreement that was in place, but the way it read, it sounded like that Dylan had actually taken charge of the team for one or two games.
I mean, I've seen that sort of thing happen in the past where a manager or like a lesser cup game will allow his assistant or whatever just to get a wee shot. But Sean Dillon's a Montrose legend. Sean Dillon might be maybe like not to the extent like Davy Cooper or Henrik Larsson or anything like that, but like I wouldn't call him a Scottish football legend. Probably not. But to me, I'm hugely impressed by the guy, because that degree of longevity, and he's not even like. He's not Scottish, but I think that's quite cool. Like, you hear the guys in the Big Boys podcast when they talk about Alex Gogic, and he's effectively, like, he's been here that long, he's effectively Scottish. I know that the Irish and like Scottish, there's a lot of cultural similarities there, but nevertheless, it feels like Sean Dillon's Scottish. So, brilliant, absolutely delighted for Sean Dillon, and hopefully that he can keep on playing, and hopefully Declan Glass can keep on playing. Now, this was a signing. I think was this the first big signing that they made, and it was like, oh, are you sure? And it kind of reminded me. I moved a direct comparison to one we've already discussed in the podcast. Grant Savoury going from Queen's Park to Morton, where you've got somebody who is a talented player, who has got a portfolio of great moments and brilliant goals and brilliant assists, but 3 league appearances at Cove last season, like spent the entire time injured, and. There's no doubt in his talent, because we've seen it. We saw how good he was when he first went on loan over a couple of years ago when they were in League Two. Saw how good a talent he was when he was close to breaking through at Dundee United, but his body just keeps on. It just keeps letting him down. Hopefully, if he is only training on a part-time basis, he can rest up. He can look after himself in a different kind of way that is what his body needs, and hopefully he can get back playing again. He's a superb talent.
Yeah, and when you touched on. It might only take 1 or 2 injuries to leave them wanting. Like, okay, so they'll have Blair Lyons and Graham Webster on either side. Then, okay, you might have Gary Oliver, Ewan Loudon, maybe as a forward.
Scored twice against Arbroath.
There's not a lot of kind of forward or attacking options. So if Glass is out for a long period of time, you're then relying on everybody else remain injury free to kind of have a decent attacking unit.
Yeah, and then you've got Sean Byrne, who is I know is a player that they've really liked from his time at Wraith Rovers.
Missed a lot of football.
Another player who's had his injury issues. He missed about 2/3 of last season. So did he injured, came back, and then was injured again?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right. A player I really like, but he is. I mean, he's pretty immobile. Doesn't do a lot of running, but his range of passing is very good, very intelligent. He's a decent tackler, but I think he quite often wins possession because he reads the game very well, and he can intercept rather than getting stuck in. But if you can keep him fit, and again, maybe part-time football suits him, that's a brilliant signing.
Yeah.
And maybe Bar Jonas in there, and who else would be in there? Kieran Freeman, actually.
Yeah, he's I don't think he's won't be used at fullback anymore. I think he's going to be used in the middle.
He was a player. I think he was a player of the year last season, and he spent the entire campaign playing in the middle of the park. I watched them. Can't remember who they played in the Scottish Cup. Was it Benburb? Maybe they played in the Scottish Cup, and I headed along.
Govan, down at Govan,
and I went along, and he was okay. He was playing against a team for the West of Scotland, but he was excellent playing in the middle of the park. That seems to be
his level.
Yeah, well, no, that seems to be more his position than actual fullback.
Yeah.
So there's certainly decent options there, but there is that risk that a lot of those players have been injured at points recently. Well, and now, currently.
I'm keen to see how Bar Jonas does as well, because I think there's a good player and a really good player, and then there's times when he looks like an absolute superstar. I mean, when he was breaking through at Kelty, when he was on loan at Kelty Heart, should I say, albeit in League Two, it was a level that he shouldn't have been playing at. He looked really, really good. then I don't think he's ever really hit those heights again. And I think he's the kind of player. There's sometimes he gives off the impression that he's going through the motions a wee bit, and I think that fans can get on his back. And I do worry that because of his body language and because of he's a guy that needs to be on top and needs to be in the ball to really see him at his best. If games pass him by, I can see him being a target for boo boys at the club.
I mean, he generally has been throughout his career. I don't think he's quite got the ability for the Championship. I do think he is fine for League One. And I think in terms of the constituent parts that Montrose have in that midfield, I do think he probably fits in reasonably well. So
providing everyone's fit.
Providing everyone's fit. So no, I think he is. Like, again, he's somebody that's been at Wraith, and I didn't rate him. However, he was a very young player at the time. I think he was on loan for Rangers maybe at that point. But I think how he's kind of grown as a player and progressed, again, I think that's a good signing.
Yeah. And then Shaughan McGuinty's the other big name that's come in. And, you know,
I like him.
Who among us hasn't had a laugh at the expense of Shaughan McGuinty? I think that if you need someone just to stand on the edge of the penalty box and kick and head the ball as far away as possible, Shaughan McGuinty will do it. Ask him to use his feet for anything like remotely cerebral, and it's going to end. And he you know, you'll see them on social media. It's like when a robot's running and then just falls over to the side and starts spinning around, and the inventors come and put a blanket over the top of it. I wish Shaughan McGuinty's like trying to play football. Keep it simple.
And let's face it, I have no doubt that Stuart Petrie will be asking him to keep things simple. I don't think he's going to try and reinvent the wheel with Shaughan McGuinty.
Exactly. Just give it to Sean Byrne. Just sit in the centre circle. Give it to Sean Byrne and move on. So is it fullback as well? I think we've got a good idea of how Montrose are going to line up. Flynn Duffy's quite a good signing from Peterhead. Yep. Fairly there's not a criticism, but like an average, like a decent League One fullback. Better defending his attacking, fit, can get up and down the wing, and so on. Ryan Williamson, hopefully he can put all his injury issues behind him, because there was a period where he did look like he was really going to come on to a game in that position. And then further on down the wings, Ian Webster, long-serving player, scored against Dundee United.
Yes, he did.
The 1-0 win. And Blair Lyons, who looks like he's really hit the ground running since he's come back from his holidays. Just a really effective winger. You know, I think this is probably Blair Lyons in his peak years. I think he's 27, 28 at the moment. So he's probably not going to get any better than this. But that sounds like I'm giving him a hard time. I don't mean to, because he can be ruinously effective. Just a wee jink, wee step overs. Again, somebody that if the fullback can stand him up, he can maybe nullify him and take him out of the game, and because his head can go down. But when he's on form, he's just great to watch. Getting a player who just very dainty on the ball when he's. I do quite like Blair Lyons.
The only disappointing thing from Montrose's summer is they didn't qualify for that League Cup.
Losing to the Spartans at home,
and that's why I struggle to enjoy the League Cup group stages, and not just because Wraith Rovers generally aren't very good at it, but it's the fact that you could have Montrose who defeat Dundee United for the first time since I think the 50s. Amazing. Go away from home against their biggest local rival in Arbroath, turn them over 2-0. Wow, that's absolutely amazing. They were quite professional against Stirling Albion and beat them 3-1. That's them on 9 points. Two brilliant results against United and Arbroath. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter a jot. So imagine if it had been a knockout competition and you beat Dundee United, or a knockout competition you beat Arbroath. You talk about that for weeks and weeks and weeks, years in the case of Dundee United, because it's like a group stage. It's ultimately not enough to get them through. And it's like that must have been hugely frustrating. And I appreciate it's their own fault for playing so poorly against Spartans, but that's an element of frustration. And maybe that is a sign of what will hold them back this season, because if things aren't going particularly well, who are you bringing off the bench to try and turn things around and reinvigorate that 11? There's no much there.
Aye, no, you're right. I was really annoyed by that when I was looking through results. I mean, it's very difficult to get annoyed by the League Cup group stages, but I think a lot of people would have liked to see Montrose get through. You can't beat Dundee United at home for the first time since the 50s and then lose to the Spartans at home. It's just, really, and after you just beaten Arbroath as well. You're absolutely right. I think that I'm going for Montrose for a 4th place finish for this one, and I think that Because what I was going to say, I think that the idea of pushing the boat out, and this is a discussion that I think maybe you and Fraser Clark might have had on a bonus podcast that you recorded. The idea of pushing the boat out, I find it really interesting. I find it really commendable. But there's part of me that's thinking, why would you want to push the boat out when you've got East Kilbride, you've got
Now
Ross
of all
County,
seasons.
now of all seasons? Why would you want to push the boat out when you've got East Kilbride, Ross County, Airdrie, Hamilton, and so on in the division? Because you could push the boat out, you spend a lot of money, and you've got nothing to show for it. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is like, then just not spend any money at all and just complacent and just hope that you get through the season, and then maybe you can't keep waiting for a time of when to push the boat out. You maybe just actually look a couple of miles down the road. Look at Forfar, for instance, who they had ultimately a successful season last season by finishing in 4th place. And it feels like they've regressed massively in just such a short space of time. So it shows you what inertia can do. And I don't think clubs can afford to do it now. I don't like talking about Montrose being ambitious, because when I'm talking about them being ambitious, that's the Scottish football ambitious where they're chucking money to bring players in. But I think in this instance it is quite good, because if you don't spend money to sign players and make the team better, then there's a danger with this division that you're not going to finish in that 6th place. You just get shunted down further and further, and you're in relegation bother, which I can't see what's happening, but I do think they'll just finish, they'll sneak into the playoffs.
I think they'll finish just outside, but it's more to do with squad depth rather than anything else. I think that starting 11 is very good. I suppose the other thing, and I'm not saying this is why they've done it, but it feels like they've been very careful with their budget over the last couple of seasons, and I haven't checked back their average attendances over the last couple of years. It does feel like the interest in the town about the team has maybe dropped off to a degree, and maybe that's understandable because it's been a couple of mediocre or average campaigns. So I suppose you have to give the fans something to get excited about, and I think they are now. You would like to think that'll make a difference in terms of selling tickets every couple of weeks, and it does feel like the fans are tentatively, they're certainly encouraged with what they've seen so far, and that team that's been put together.
Yeah, if I was a Montrose fan, I'd be excited about that. I'd be really excited about it, and I wish them well, because they're a club we really like. I think I speak for both of us there. They're a club we really like. Great manager, good culture. Hopefully they can finish in the top 4, but if it's someone else, if it's Airdrie or East Kilbride that end up taking their place, that wouldn't surprise me. Now let's go from one team wearing blue to another team who wear blue. We'll talk about Peterhead, Shaughan. On the whole, I think last season has to be seen as a big success for Peterhead. Promoted to the division as League 2 champions, and for the best part, held their own. They could be a really exciting team, all action, really frightening forward line at their best. And coming into the final third of the season, they were challenging for a promotion playoff place, but they fell away as the campaign reached its climax with just one win in their final 9 matches. Nevertheless, 5th place finish, still a credible achievement. But can the duo of Jordan Brown and Ryan Strachan do it again? And can they do it without their star striker, who has departed for Ayr United?
When I saw the list of players that were departing Peterhead, I thought, how on earth do you cope with this? So you mentioned Flynn Duffy and Kieran Shanks moving on. We've mentioned Max Barry, Craig McGuffey, all very, very good players. I mean, Shanks especially. Goodness me, the amount of goals he scored last season. But I actually think the recruitment looks pretty good over the piece. I mean, to bring in Mitch Megginson and Blair Yule from Cove Rangers. I know Mitch Megginson is maybe getting on a wee bit now, but he had a good season again last time around, and I really like Blair Yule. James Stokes from Edinburgh, that feels like a really good.
I'm really keen to see how James Stokes does in a non-Michael McIndoe team, because I thought the guy was class. I thought as a pressing forward, there's not many better than James Stokes. He was superb in that Edinburgh City team, but it's what else do you have other than hard running? I mean, he did score. I mean, he's not prolific. I think he only got a handful of goals during his time at Edinburgh. But you can't just be a defensive forward. We need to see a bit more for you. And are you going to be able to create chances? Because I imagine that if you basically swap out Kieran Shanks, put Mitch Megginson in his place, you still got guys like Peter Pollitt and Cammy Smith. You chuck in like that, maybe somebody like Niall McGuigan as well, who might come off the bench. And you add James Stokes. That's your job, really, is to create the chances for Megginson to score. And I'm keen to see what else Stokes has to offer. Because when I think of James Stokes, that's the first thing, hard running, as it comes to mind. Show me what else you've got.
So those feel like solid additions under known quantities. And then when you chuck in a wild card like Robel Telek-Michael, an Eritrean international who played for Ethiopian Coffee FC I mean, that's if you cannot get excited about that, then what can you get excited about?
Really funny when they announced it on social media. Like defensive midfielder who'll bring strength, energy, and presence to the team. Basically, all they talked about was his physical attributes. No idea if this is a good football or not. Like,
he looks quite slight. Like, I wouldn't say he was like well built or necessarily tall, but he does look like a decent player from what I've seen from him so far. I did go down a rabbit hole when I was, but not actually a rabbit hole about his career. It was, so he played in Ethiopia, but they have a completely different calendar. So in Ethiopia,
to the Gregorian calendar.
Yes. So in Ethiopia, it is only the year 2017. Believe it or not.
So how's there more days in the calendar? They still measure days?
Oh, I can't remember how it's measured exactly. I started to get very confused.
They must do. There must be some. If we've got 365 days a year in the Gregorian calendar, they must have like 380 or something like that. So it's basically the same length of. Oh man,
it's quite interesting. Like if you're going abroad and you say, "Oh, when I'm away to America, how many hours are they ahead or behind or whatever?" If you're going to Ethiopia, how many years behind are they? 8.
Would I like to go back to 2017
before COVID?
Oh, let's go. It'd be interesting to go back to a pre-COVID time. What would it be like? Nicer. Nicer. Oh no, so the first year, what was it? 2017. So you'd have the Brexit referendum would have taken place.
Right, okay.
Donald Trump would have been the first president of the United States.
Let's not go back.
And Leicester would have been playing in Europe after winning the English Premier League title. Let's just live in now. You don't want to live in the past like Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. You don't want to do that. What I found quite interesting as well in terms of recruitment, they've taken 3 loan players from Aberdeen, but Cove Rangers have got a cooperation agreement with them, so I don't know how.
I don't know who's getting the best.
Who's getting the best? How do you decide which ones go where?
I don't know. You would think the team that you have the cooperation agreement with would be the one that you give the best players to. But
what if Peterhead are paying the big bucks?
Well, then you give them to Peterhead.
Give them to Peterhead. We'll find out when the sides meet against one another. That'll be a lot of fun. They've also, as well as those guys like Blair Yule, you touched on there. I think Blair Yule's a great player, man. Really, really good player. I mean, he's early. He's about 33 now, but I don't think that'll really slow him down. You know, he's still got loads to offer. As the guys, they've taken a couple of punts on some trialists as well. They've got Tobias Davis-Brown. He was on the books of Dundee, spent a bit of time on loan at Carnoustie Panmure in the Midlands Premier League.
Centre half.
Centre defender. I don't have down what position he's got down here, but I thought it was interesting to discuss what the step up is like from the Midlands Premier League to League One. We'll find out. The other player is Benny Jackson Luyeye. Aye, he is a former Celtic Academy player. Played for the B team. Actually, the wee spell at East Kilbride as well, but left the club in 2025. So he'd have been in the Lowland League with them. I can't say I've heard of him, but he looks like he's been out of the game for a year before pitching up at if transfer markets. I know you don't let transfer market be unreliable, especially the further down you come. But certainly 2 interesting acquisitions.
I do wonder if they might be squad fillers more than anything else, but who knows? Could be superstars in the making.
I think the players that they've retained from last season are pretty good. They've got good centre backs. Jason Brown, he'd probably be there for the rest of his career, and Josh Kerr when he came in, I thought the pair of them linked quite well together. I quite think that's like the A and B defend dynamic there. I think Josh Kerr just wants to head and kick everything, and Jason Brown's a wee bit more cerebral. In front of them, you've got Dylan Forrest. Really, really always like talking about Dylan Forrest, someone who's just got a really good range of passing, really good at pulling the strings in the middle of the park. And then you've got the biggest midden in the lower leagues, Big Andy McCarthy. Honestly, see the idea of just like leaning into him and collapsing with his big arse poking out there, and I have a begrudging respect for him. If he played for me, I would think I would love him, but the fact that he doesn't, man, he does my head in.
And they've still got Cammy Smith. I mean, Cammy Smith, another really, really good. A good player for League One level, but I think he's been really exceptional for Peterhead today. It feels like they've got a decent squad, and when they played, it's funny when they went to. I didn't go to the game. I wasn't at the Wraith Peterhead match, but I only looked at the Wraith Rovers team, so I looked at their starting lineup. I saw that Wraith kind of edged at 1-0. Watched the highlights. Thought Peterhead actually created maybe as many chances as Wraith. It was actually only after I watched the highlights I looked at Peterhead's starting 11 for that game. They're actually missing a number of players, but they gave as good as they got from Wraith, albeit like Wraith knew it was 99% a kind of dead rubber. But regardless, I was quite impressed by them. I'd tell everything I read, and then by watching the highlights, I thought they looked decent.
Yeah, I'm. My expectations for Peterhead, though, that's the only thing as well. Can they reprise that 5th place finish? I don't know, just purely because of how many better sides there are in the division than there were last season, or maybe on paper certainly better sides than Peterhead. I think that's the challenge. I think as well, like a lot of the teams, there's a strong starting 11, a couple of players that you've got in reserve there. Like for instance, Niall McGuigan, very much getting on ears, and he's now a player coach. Jamie McNee's left the club. He's gone and taken over at Caledonian Braves, which is really disappointing. What I mean by that is I'm delighted he's got the opportunity to move into management, but he was a really good interview. Yeah. He was always explained the game really clearly, and another person who really just seemed to enjoy coaching and seemed to enjoy explaining and talking about the intricacies of the game.
Wouldn't surprise me if he'd done really well and then maybe eventually comes back into the SPFL with being a manager somewhere.
I hope so.
It comes across really well.
I've no idea if Caledonian Braves are any good or not, but from having a look at some of the players that have been signed by SPFL clubs, a lot of them have cherry-picked players from Caledonian Braves.
And if they've still got the money coming in from naive Americans,
yes.
that can only be a boost for them.
Yeah, aye. That's imagine finding out your dad had frittered your money away in the Caledonian Braves, your inheritance. You get power of attorney.
Californian grandchild realising he has nothing when his grandfather passes away.
Aye, like your grandfather was like a sugar plantation, generational wealth from the sugar plantations, and that is it. Comes out when just you think it's your time to inherit it. Or no,
Jimmy McNee's bought a left back player.
That's it. You earn a 5% share in Caledonian Braves. Cheers. Imagine going like a spiritual journey over to Caledonian Braves, coming for California just to go and stand in a cage in Motherwell. Oh dear. They were one of my favourite teams to talk about on the podcast last year as well. I mean, I know we didn't. They're quite a difficult team to actually watch, given them how far up, how remote Peterhead is from the central belt. I mean, you're only going to. I drove. How many times up there last year? Was up there twice last year. Once. I certainly drove for the game where Dennis Weir won with Ross Taylor scoring a free kick at the end. I drove all the way up, and it felt like getting there. It felt long, a lot longer. I mean, 3.5 hours, but it felt like it was like, my God, it seemed to be getting. The closer I was getting, the further away I was getting. So they're difficult to talk about from games when you actually go and see them. But going by the highlights, they are like loads of fun to watch. Some of the combination play you talked about, Cammy Smith, he is just a right good player, Cammy Smith, and it's unfortunate. Same with guys like Peter Pollitt. The only reason that they're playing at this level is just because of injury, and that's why they have to go to play part-time football, because these guys have certainly got the talent and the ability to be playing further up the food chain, but certainly what they lack in hamstrings, they make up for, and by making Peterhead good.
I've only been up there once, and it was I went up in a supporters bus, and it was
the terrace for filming.
And it turned out like they made a VT on the bus. And
were you not told to like sit as far away from the cameras as possible?
But I didn't know. I didn't know what the arrangement was. I knew they were making one, so I was like, Andy Mass turns up, and like the camera moves doing the camera that day. And I was like, do you need me to do anything? Andy Mass was like, oh no, you can't be on this at all. It's like the Ghostbusters. You cannot cross the streams between the studio and the VTs. I think it was one point you see the back of my head, but that's it.
It's like, you know, in wrestling, breaking kayfabe. That is very much like that. You're not allowed to break kayfabe. I think there's not much else to say about Peterhead. I'm just keen to see how Strachan and Brown get on as well, because I think kind of similar to David Gold and Colin Hamilton, under their watch, it seems to have been like just progress. I mean, that the first full season they were in charge, a second place finish in the league.
And nearly won it, didn't it? It went very...
No, that was the year that Stenny won the league.
No, East Fife pipped them with No, sorry, they pipped East Fife, didn't they?
That's right. That's right. They won it the next season, and then the season that they returned to League One, they finished just outside the playoffs. Yeah. So there's like 3 years of upward progress. I'd like to think that can continue. It's just with the makeup of the rest of the teams in the division, I think that's going to be difficult for them.
I think quality-wise, they might be every bit as strong this season than last, but as you say, I think the division might be a bit tougher this time around, so I wouldn't be surprised I don't think they'll finish top 4. I wouldn't even be surprised if they finished slightly lower in the league, but not necessarily because they've got any worse.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't feel like losing Shanks is a big blow, because he's the kind of player that maybe not necessarily makes something out of nothing, but could turn, like, see, bad balls into good ones, because he was quite, he'd always like to chase stuff down. He did have that degree of quality, and he could do the unexpected as well. I think with Mitch Megginson, you kind of know what you're going to be getting from him, and I don't think he's actually featured at all yet because of injury. So Shanks is a big loss, and those guys, lots of players, when you actually go through them, I'm sure that the managers would have been disappointed with the players they've lost, but happy enough with the players that have come in.
Yep.
And who knows if Robert Tekelmichael is going to be the player that's going to lead them to glory. I hope so, and hope to get a chance to go and watch a game. Is it Ethiopian Coffee?
Yes, that's right.
Brilliant. Now we'll go from the northeast of the country. In fact, this will be the team who the furthest north in the division, the team furthest south in the division.
Annan, slightly further south.
Aye, but they're in different divisions.
Oh, sorry, right. Thought you meant in the country.
That's okay. Listen, it's been a long. We've put a long shift in, Shaughan. Mistakes can sometimes filter through. Now, Queen of the South started their 4th consecutive season in League One with one ambition: win promotion back to the Championship. And it was our 4th consecutive season when it did not go their way. Peter Murphy, known around these here parts as Grinning Pete, had assembled a handy side capable of running roughshod over the division's also-rans, but they really struggled against the better sides in the league. They recorded just 2 wins against the other 3 sides who finished in the top 4, and that was twice against the Alloa Athletic. Nevertheless, their form over the campaign was good enough to see it conclude in 3rd, but they could not get the better of Stennisweir in the playoff finals and lost out on penalties. Grinning Pete would leave the club at the end of the season. Seemed like a nice enough guy, but lacked the tactical versatility against better opponents and often came across as ungracious following a defeat. And while we will no doubt miss his 28-minute post-match interviews with Sandra, where he effectively answered variations of the same question, I don't really think anyone at Palmerston will, and a change of direction did seem inevitable. The veteran striker, Nicky Clark, has been promoted to manager. His father, Sandy, has been drafted in as his assistant. I'm unsure if this kind of arrangement has ever happened in Scottish football before, but the pair of them, my goodness, they have got a very big task ahead of them. They're working with a reduced budget for the season ahead. A number of quality players have moved on elsewhere. Signings have been slow to materialise, and as of recording, the team just doesn't look ready for the campaign ahead.
I mean, signings, not just slow, I mean, they've almost none to speak of. I mean, the fact that when I started this today, in terms of when I wrote out like maybe a likely starting 11, and it's changed now as we've been recording, I had a question mark for the goalkeeping position. I mean, they have not had their kind of, it's not just that the budget has been slashed, but they also don't have their kind of worries to seek for differing reasons, I suppose. Like the Trevor Carson, I thought was a great signing. So they lost Ross Stewart, who left under a bit of a cloud because of his social media posts.
Was he quite critical of the chairman or supportive of the
It felt unnecessary. It felt all very unnecessary. But I thought Trevor Carson, because that's a really good replacement. He then suffers apparently a really bad injury in training.
I thought he was just injured when he turned up.
I thought he'd suffered. I'd read that he'd suffered an injury. You could be right. I don't know, but I suppose ultimately you would compliment Carson on the fact that he just went to Clark and said, "I'm not going to be able to play this season. Just tear up my contract," because he probably didn't have to do that. So fair play to him for that. That's a blow, albeit it sounds this afternoon that they've managed to bring in Denise Mehmet, who will be fine for League One. I think that's perfectly fine. But the other kind of disaster they've had is the Kai Kennedy situation. A player who was so important to them last season, and from what you can gather, has essentially approached them this summer to say that he doesn't want to play for them anymore, despite still having a year left on his contract. And ultimately they've relented. And I appreciate there's some Queen of South fans that have said, that's ridiculous, just make him sit in the stand. Well, you can't, because he might be maybe your top wage earner, and you've barely got a squad. So you cannot possibly allow your highest paid player to sit in the stand.
Really shite for him.
When you've only got a squad of 15, 16. You have to get rid of him. As much as you probably would want to make him suffer a bit because of how he's treated the club, but you kind of have to let him go. Unfortunately, I don't know where he'll end up.
He did the same thing at York.
Yeah.
He forced to move out of York. I don't know who his agent is that's advising, but that's just, that's really shite that you can behave like that and get away with it and be disrespectful to your club and your teammates and your wage employers. I always try to look at those kind of things from a player's perspective, and sometimes that's you've got to be like selfish to get your own way and to get what you want. But I know even put in a sort of like ironic hat on, like, you know, for like kind of I tried to enjoy Argentina's performance in the World Cup final, but I just couldn't. It's like, I don't know if I've got to the age where it's just like that sort of stuff I can't enjoy. Just be sound, just give it a go. And Kai Kennedy, it's a shame because he's a talented player, but it just feels like at stages of his career he has made wrong moves or moves that have pissed people off, like cancelling. He was on loan at Inverness Caledonian Thistle, wasn't he? And he was right good for them. Like cancelling a loan move there because he couldn't be bothered going up and down. There was an article, in fact, it was published in Pine Bovril. It was a screenshot from, it was a Daily Record article. It was like he was playing a match at Gayfield. They were just trying to make like Gayfield seem right, and it's like Kai Kennedy's like he couldn't believe where he was or something, having starred at Rangers youth teams, looking around the Gayfield dressing room, couldn't believe where he was. And I know that's like typical like tabloid journal hack, but it's like so disrespectful to your employer, the teams you're coming up against, the clubs you're coming up against, who I have no doubt when Kai Kennedy was a Cali Thistle player going to Arbroath or wherever it was, he was treated impeccably well there. So it's just shite for the journalist, but I have no sympathy for Kennedy.
And as well, I never checked, but off the top of my head, I'm fairly certain that when so he went on loan to Inverness, and I'm sure he was really good, but it always felt like after that his loan spells got worse and worse and worse.
He didn't like travelling up the A9, or somebody didn't want. He was worried about his safety travelling up the A9, like for car accidents. Can maybe understand that to an extent.
I mean, he certainly didn't impress for Wraith Rovers on loan.
Yeah,
and after that, nearly all of his loan spells were reasonably unimpressive. And I felt, well, a lot of this is on you in terms of the fact your career appears to be going downhill. And I actually felt like, to a degree, Queen of South was helping to
rehabilitate him.
Rehabilitate his career. And I thought, right, well, another good season at Queen of South, and you can maybe have your pick of championship teams. Now, like, I know, like, he was linked to Livingston, but I don't think Livingston are necessarily short of a bob or two because they've got their American owner. So you would imagine that if Livingston were after him, they could offer 10 grand or 20 grand or whatever it would take. Let's face it, it's probably going to be a fairly token gesture in terms of a fee. The fact that they haven't made that bid, I'm guessing that move isn't going to materialise. So where he goes from here, I don't know. I would imagine he'll do all right, though. I'd imagine he'll probably get like a decent move, whether it's Australia or America or somebody in Scotland. I've no doubt he'll probably get like a decent contract, but I bet he doesn't do particularly well there.
Yeah, it goes to like the North American Soccer League or something like that, like the second or third tier in English football. Yeah, but just classless. That's how I describe it. Classless, particularly when the club are in the mess they're in now. I know it's important. It's a short career. You've got to try and make as much money as possible, but you really had the club over the barrel. And as you say, the club are just like, you would normally fight and makes you know, listen, you're under contract. If you want to leave, a team's going to have to come and pay for you. But it says like, listen, just.
Is this, it feels like that's happened a few times, and admittedly you're going back a while now, but did that happen with, I'm sure John Baird done it? Was there no somebody else in it? Maybe Mark Kerr done something similar, and I'm sure it was roughly the same time, albeit you're going back a while now. But if you're a Queen of South fan, you remember those moments, you remember those incidents, so it must really hack them off that it's happened to them again.
Yeah, definitely. And it's you know, so do you want to talk about the players who have left the club then? Because that's I think that's there's no club that have been decimated, I think, to the same extent as the Doonhamers. Reece Lyon, for instance, has gone to Ayr United. I was very complimented about him when we previewed The Honest Men. Versatile, powerful player, difficult to replace. Somebody with building that, and somebody that quality as well. It's not then. So your best players are going. So there's Kennedy agitated for a move and just being told not to come back. His contract ripped up. Reece Lyon going. Trevor Carson coming, as you touched on, and then basically having to retire shortly afterwards. But then even sort of like jobbing players, like decent jobbers, like Mikey Hewitt, moving on. You think he'd have been there for a while longer. Matty Douglas, like Matty Douglas isn't an amazing player, but he's like the captain, and I think he was like quite well liked around the place.
Jordan
Allen, I'm a bit less bothered about Jordan Allen, because I think that when he went to the club, I think Jordan Allen's been fit for a while.
But it feels like trouble began last season with Peter Murphy. Like, it kind of feels like they didn't really see eye to eye, because even when Jordan Allen was on the bench, he was very rarely getting off it. And I do think in the situation that Queen of South find themselves in now, Jordan Allen would be a kind of perfectly adequate option.
I don't think he's fit enough to play full-time football. I think he's got issues with his knee, and that precludes him from like maximise yourself. Kind of something to work on, like Declan Glass, for instance, maybe dropping down to like Stirling Albion and just like training less often. That might be better for you. The other one, speaking of injury players like Brennan Dickinson, like Dickinson, when he was available, was brilliant. Like a right good player, could play pretty much anywhere on the like there's your transfer market, all these white dots everywhere. Brennan Dickinson could do it, and I think the club, there was quite a bit of an outlay on him. But I think if you're to take the 2 seasons that he played the club, I think he must have missed half the games that Queens were involved in. That is quite literally half the games they were involved in, just because he wasn't fit, and he was out of contract as well. It's a luxury the club just can't afford at the moment, and because of that, it's just
it feels like they can't afford anything. Never mind a luxury.
I mean, you've the guys that they've brought in 2 fullbacks. Xander McKenzie, he basically just was a permanent signing after a loan spell last season. Generally well thought of, being in standing. Same with Caleb Goldie, like a solid enough player at Peterhead last season.
Is he solid enough? I was surprised that he's ended up at Queen of South. I'm not entirely sure I'm surprised he's popped up at a full-time team.
Yeah, and then you've got Chris McQueen, who's coming from Edinburgh City. I'm really surprised by this one. I mean, I know that Edinburgh City last season, their issues weren't just down to Chris McQueen, but this was a team who were just losing like 2 or 3 goals a week without reply, and the team were noticeably poorer with Chris McQueen in it than the likes of like Lewis MacArthur or Eden Lynch.
I mean, ultimately, when Michael McIndoe tried to kind of reboot that team in January, obviously he was critical of how they'd defended, but ultimately players like McQueen, as you say, made them worse.
Yeah.
So again, very surprising. The thing is as well, I believe he'd played in friendlies and had been a trialist and hadn't really impressed, and he ends up winning a contract.
Aye, and from reading the reports, it doesn't sound like he's done particularly well so far. There was a game, might be against Aberdeen. I think he did a bit of an aberration in that match. He might come good, but it's not often you see somebody leave Edinburgh City who finished bottom of the SPFL and move to a full-time team. I find that strange. He's a big laddie, and he can put himself about it, but just in terms of that quality, I just think, when I saw him at Edinburgh City last season, it's I'm surprised. Good luck to him though.
And like the comparison between Queen of South and every other team we've spoken about in terms of players that are coming in, like I might have 10 players, you might have 16 players. There's 5 now at Queen of South because they managed to bring in a goalkeeper at long last.
Who was it? So you got
two goalies. Trevor Carson's already departed.
Right.
Mackenzie McQueen and Goldie.
Aye, Mehmet, from memory, Mehmet was quite good at this level with Dunfermline Athletic when they won the league,
but didn't have that much to do because he had a really solid League One defence in front of him, and Dunfermline generally
in front of him now.
Dunfermline generally dominated possession. He won't be as poor at League One as he was in the Championship, and even at Championship level, he wasn't always poor. I think based on the situation that they found themselves in, and when the season starts, Mehmet is probably like a decent acquisition.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of the time when we talked about like Montrose, for instance, we're saying they've got a decent starting 11, but very little beyond it.
Like, if it was a 6-a-side league, they might have quite a good 6-a-side.
This is really difficult. I'm trying to think. They're probably the best player on the team now that Kennedy's moved on is Liam Smith.
Yeah,
the sort of like the winger. On his day can be really, really good, but there's a reason you're playing at League One football. And similar to what we were talking about with the Hamilton Academical players, it felt like he got dragged down to the level he was at. You look for somebody like him, I'm going to imagine they spent a wee bit of money on to sign him on a permanent. Was it from Manchester City? I think they actually signed him permanently from, so I don't know if there's compensation or whatever, but to keep him, to encourage him, probably sign him on a 2-year contract and give him a wee bit of money. Don't know if that's the case. I'm just imagining, but I don't really think they've had value for money from him best. And up front, you got Nicky Clark.
Yeah, who started the season well.
Yeah, he scored a really good goal against Aberdeen, actually. But I think he sees himself as more of a number 10, just a penalty box striker. And you think, well, no, Nicky, like, go and you just stay up front and we'll build the team around you. But it's like, no, mate, you actually might need to. How deep do you want to drop Nicky? Can you play centre back, Nicky? You fancy playing there? And he'll probably be up front alongside Curtis Guthrie, who not prolific, but just a big unit,
cumbersome target man, who can ruffle up defenders, I suppose. But as you said, he'll end the season with 6 goals.
Aye, for the size of him, you want him to be. I'm trying to think who's like Diego Costa must be the most aggressive striker I can think of. Be more like Diego Costa, less like Costa Coffee. That would be my message to send.
That's your advice to Curtis Guthrie. Be more like Diego Costa,
less like Costa Coffee. There you go.
Less like Ethiopia Coffee.
Less like Ethiopia Coffee. Maybe that's his level, actually. And then further back in defence, you got like Jack Hannon, Taylor Charters. They're decent enough centre backs. Quite like Taylor Charters as well. He's a wee bit cultured. In the middle of the
Benjamin Luison. I mean, he's been in and out of the team. They'll be able to rely on him. They'll probably have to rely on him to a degree.
I was thinking he's like a bit of a wrecking ball in the middle of the park, but it just feels like he can sometimes look a wee bit off the pace. It's like the game's a wee bit faster than him. I think he's quite a reactive player. He's maybe someone like when we discussed Kieran Miller earlier, someone that can basically break up play. His advantage is he's got that like a bigger frame, so he's a lot more difficult to shove off the ball, but maybe a wee bit slower in that regard. Jack Stott's okay.
Can't say fairer than that.
I think that we've discussed every single player in the Queen of the South team there.
And it hasn't taken long.
No. They're going to be augmented by club from the youth side. God, I can't talk. You must be listening.
But they won't be.
You must be listening to me thinking, is he having a stroke? Is he okay? I'm speaking. I'm unaware of the words that aren't coming out of my mouth properly.
But I would be amazed if the players that come up from the youth team to augment the first team are good enough.
Yeah, I can't see it myself. I'm hopeful that there are more players to follow. I'm pleased to see that Dennis, I was going to call him Dennis Wright, they Kieran Wright on trial as well.
Yep.
As well, like Dennis Mehmet. Dennis Wright sounds like someone from EastEnders. It's a good name. Somebody who was in EastEnders in the early 90s. I'm pleased they've got him in, but they just need, I think, every single area of the pitch. I think they're about 6 or 7 players short, and whether or not they get them, I don't know. There's talk of, same with Morton actually. Certainly, the fans want to see the team entered into like a cooperation loan, and I think you may be misunderstanding what a cooperation loan does. It's like you're not going to get like the best the club has to offer. You're going to get a bunch of 16 and 17 year olds. Some of them might be good. The ones at Queen's Park are probably really good. I don't know if I'm going to imagine like with David McCallum's relationship with both clubs, he's maybe saying like, go and send the best ones to lesser. And Alloa, because they've worked well in the past, so there's probably they want to do the same thing there. For a team like Queen's, I don't know who'd you go into. Kilmarnock maybe as your nearest club.
I think they did have one with Kilmarnock last season, maybe, did they?
Oh, they might have done.
I think it did, because I'm sure that's how they got Cole Burke,
right?
Maybe, who then picked up an injury and then ultimately went back.
Right, well there you go then. I know that Annan Athletic had that cooperation agreement with them, and it basically they sent 4 boys and Willie Gibson sent 2 of them back. Nowhere near it. Thanks very much though. Cheers. What are we saying then for Queens?
I think the more we've spoken about Queen of South, the more I think they might be in the bottom 2 spots. I suppose the only thing that dissuades me from that is it the fact that they're a full-time team. That would be unheard of for a full-time team to get sucked into those bottom 2 places. 8th.
Seem better than Cove. And they're not getting thrashed to the same extent that Cove are. But it just feels like if, God forbid, anything happens to, like, say, Nicky Clark picks up an injury, not out the realms of possibility given his age.
Yep.
It's going to be a struggle. Hopefully these young boys are good.
That they don't have yet. Oh no, the youth players.
These youth players, these 15-year-olds from Dumfries.
These ones are so good they've never played for the club yet.
Yet being the key word. Can't wait to see them rocking up. They've got East Kilbride in the first game of the season as well.
4-0 East Kilbride.
Yeah. Now let's talk about our 10th and final team from League One, Ross County. And Shaughan, let's not mince our words. Ross County were abysmal last season. Both in absolute and relative terms, we were one of the worst sides in Scotland, maybe even the whole of Europe. When we previewed their championship season 12 months ago, we backed them as favourites to win the division. And yeah, there were maybe question marks over Don Cowie, but they retained some good players from the previous season in the Premiership. They made a handful of decent acquisitions and, on paper at least, just looked better than every other side they would come up against. Unfortunately for us, this is a very rare instance of getting things wrong on the podcast. Doesn't happen very often, but this was one of those few moments. They endured a really poor start to the campaign. They fell some distance behind St Johnstone, and as Don Cowie left the club just 3 games into the season, expectations were recalibrated from league winners to promotion hopefuls. Tony Docherty, Don Cowie's replacement, tried to overhaul the culture at the club, but to no avail. The team were routinely embarrassed, and following the 6-0 defeat to Wraith Rovers in mid-December, Docherty was gone, having just lasted 3.5 months. Stuart Kettlewell, a superb player and a decentish manager for the club between March 2018 and December 2020, was brought back to revive their fortunes, and this was a bit of a surprise. Kettlewell's previous spell at the club ended quite badly. His time at Motherwell ended miserably, and the spell in time at Kilmarnock was just rubbish from start to finish. He could not bring around any improvement. They spent the remainder of the season bobbing around at the foot of the table, and they would be relegated by Wraith Rovers at Starters Park on the final day. An embarrassing end to an embarrassing season. Back-to-back relegations. Now, I said a number of times that the club needed a cultural reset. Instead, Stuart Kettlewell was kept on as manager. Don Cowie returned to the club as the head of professional programme. And a quote from Roy McGregor on the club's website said that we are delighted that Stuart has accepted the offer to become our permanent manager. After a disappointing season where Stuart led the team to within minutes of retaining our championship status, we feel he has the right skill set, traits and affinity with the club in the Highlands to take us forward. So while things have stayed the same, Roy McGregor still in charge, Stevie Ferguson still the CEO, there's been lots of turnaround in terms of the playing staff. Long-serving players have departed, so too have some big names. They've been replaced by some intriguing acquisitions. They topped their League Cup group stage, finished a point ahead of Premiership side Dundee, and I fancy them a bit. Scared to put my neck on the line and actually say it.
I know we made an ass of ourselves last season by predicting that they would win the championship.
We don't get many things wrong, Shaughan. We got that one wrong.
But I do really fancy them this time around. And I think their summer business has been interesting, as you say. I think it is suitable for the division that they're in and what they are looking to do. And I think not only have they put together a good squad for that level, but like he's probably addressed a lot of the other kind of frustrations from fans in terms of, like, not only were they rubbish, they were also rubbish to watch.
Yeah.
Like, no width, no pace. I think he's addressed that in terms of Richard Chin, in terms of bringing back Adam Emsley and making use of him. Luke McCarville, again, a wide player. That's quite interesting to see how he gets on. Another player who I suppose can play in a couple of positions is Lewis Jameson. Now, he was poor during his time at Starts Park, but in a team that you would imagine is going to be dominating possession in most games, the fact he can play a couple of positions, he can play up top if Brian Graham needs a rest, he can play out wide, scored on his debut against Airdrie on Saturday. So again, that's another kind of interesting signing. But I think just having Brian Graham, if you have him as your focal point up front, and you've got players who are just going down the lines, who are getting to the byline, or they're cutting back, or they're getting deliveries into the area, Brian Graham will almost certainly score you goals. And then that's going forward in terms of protecting the back four. If only they had some protection last season. I think Chris Hamilton, who again isn't somebody who I raved about in the Championship. I thought he was limited, but he was like a kind of, I think if you cut him, he would bleed black and white. And I think in terms of, he was a reliable player, limited at Dunfermline, but done a job ultimately. I think he will do very well. And well, we know he can do very well in League One. And I think he's quite an intelligent signing for them. So I think they've addressed a number of queries, that they've kind of plugged a number of gaps that badly required plugging, and they've started the season really, really well.
Can't disagree with any of that. At all. Yeah, I think that the signing Brian Graham's huge. Signing Brian Graham's huge. And changing the style of play, there's two things that they've done there. So address the style of play like that. They would, last season, the season they were relegated from the Premiership, they would always continue to play like a 3-4-3, 3-5-2. And it worked up to a point, but then it just stopped working and they didn't change. Yeah. And I think there was the hope that when they dropped into the Championship, they would see a bit of revitalisation on that front. That didn't happen, and they continued with this 3-5-2, and it was quite stodgy. There was no real attacking width. Jay Henderson was the only player who could play out wide with pace. And
didn't he seem fancied?
I didn't seem fancied it, and maybe it wasn't even that good anyway. The fact that he's just away to Coleraine
maybe.
kind of suggests that he might not be as good as we thought they were. But you've signed Brian Graham, who's basically going to replace what Jordan White or Uchek Piazza would do. You've got Adam Emsley back in the fold, who should have been back in the fold like after that halfway through the last season, and you've got Richard Chin in there. So you've got guys there that just want to hit the byline and chuck balls into probably one of the best penalty box strikers going. I say penalty box or penalty spot strikers. I think he's penalty box 6-yard box strikers. If that ball was going in at Brian Graham's head, he would throw his mother off a speedboat to get in front of that ball and head it into the net. He is super aggressive, super competitive. I think he likes proving people wrong as well. I mean, we had him on a view. You in the episode when he was on a view for the terrace?
I wasn't, but I did. Everybody spoke really highly of him.
Class, man. He was class, and it was quite interesting. Even though you're in I don't want to use the word sterile, but it's like a safe environment. You can still get a bit of measure for him, and I really enjoyed speaking to him. And speaking to him, you can see the kind of player he is and what motivates him. And you know, he's not going to move outside of the post. That's daft getting him to do it. And I think that him going to Falkirk, it was an interesting signing and one worth making, because I think that he would have gone there after having such a good time at Partick Thistle. I think he needed to go. If the club weren't going to take him on as manager, he pretty much acknowledged that if the club weren't going to take him on as manager, he would need to leave. And he goes to Falkirk, and they get the chance to play at Premiership football at his age. Too good an opportunity to turn down, and he absolutely knocked his pan in for the club. There was a big drop off for his performances to like Ross McKeever's performances, but that's just comes with age and the fact that he's maybe been asked to do stuff that he is not necessarily his wheelhouse. You're not bringing Brian Graham in to close down defenders or run the channels. You just want him in the box there, and he'll be able to do that no problem. The other stuff as well, he has a real affinity for the club. He has been at County. I think this is his third spell with
Quite possibly,
the club. You know, he's been on only. I think he went on loan there and he actually signed for them permanently. So he knows what it's like to play there. I'm going to imagine that he is living on a part-time basis in the Highlands. Maybe comes home at weekends, spending a bit of time with his family, and is up there like Tuesday to Saturday, which is great. That's maybe something that was quite disruptive last season in terms of when players would have to attend training. I think that must be a line. If you're a full-time football club, you can't let boys live all over the country. You need to be here. You need to be available for training. And I think as well, just how fit he is, how motivated he is, the fact that he's still got like single-digit body fat. That's a real inspiration to a lot of guys. Like, look what he's doing. Look at the stuff that he's doing to look after himself and keep himself in shape. I want to live my life like that. And like 5 goals and 2 assists in the League Cup group stages, I think it's going to be quite simple. If Brian Graham scores goals, Ross County are going to win the title. I know that's such an obvious thing to say, but the best way to get Brian Graham, fast players out wide, balls into the box, get him to attack them. And the 3-5-2 was never conducive. Would not have been conducive. That wasn't conducive for Jordan White or Uchek Piazza. Change it up. Go back to a more attacking style of football. Fans didn't countenance that 3-5-2 last season. They're certainly not going to countenance it this time.
I think the only way they don't win the league is if something similar happens that happened last season, where it felt like, right, okay, so they're not playing very well. They're certainly not as good as we thought they were, but there's clearly something wrong in the dressing room and off the field as well. Now, I don't think that will happen. I do wonder about the dynamic between. We're talking about the fact that Brian Graham wasn't going to be the Partick Thistle manager, and he decided, well, he can't just go back into the dressing room. I'm not saying that was an issue at Falkirk by any stretch of imagination, but you do wonder how he goes from being the manager of a club where essentially he dictates everything that happens to just going back to being a player. And I think I get the impression he is a spiky character. I get the impression that people might find him quite difficult to work with. I think Kettlewell as an individual might have similar elements of that to his personality. So I do think that I think they'll win the league unless there is a kind of butting of heads in the dressing room, which it feels like that's what knackered them, or certainly partly knackered them last time around.
Yes, I can see the point that you're making. I think Brian Graham will be going there wanting assurances he'll be playing every week. I think that if there's a loss of form. I'm trying to think who's actually in the squad that's going to play behind him. I don't really think there's anyone else that's back up. Maybe Lewis Jameson.
Yeah,
is going to be back up here. I know like Kieran Phillips can sort of play as but you're not going to stick him as your you're going to stick Kieran Phillips as your number 9. So I think it's going to be you're banking on Brian. That's
because I suppose that was part of the issue. No, it was a huge issue. But if you were a forward at Partick Thistle when Brian Graham was there, you basically know you're not going to get a game.
Yeah.
They don't have too many forwards at this moment in time in Ross County. So yeah, there's very much, I'm not saying all of the eggs are in the Brian Graham basket, but there's a lot of eggs in there.
Bank on Brian. That's what that's the 3 words that Stuart Kettlewell said when he demanded that Roy McGregor open up the checkbook. Bank on Brian. And so they have done. Yeah, in terms of personality, I think that's like super competitive, quite macho. To go back to what the Partick Thistle chairman said, was like he's the alpha.
Yep.
I can see that. I can see that, and I can understand like in that super competitive environment, it might knock people's noses out of joint. I think he might be grateful. I think it felt like he was taking on tons at one point, where he was the manager of Partick Thistle women's team, playing for Partick Thistle, trying to go through his coaching badges at the same time, or something like that, where he was spending so much time like out of the house, or that'd be you'd have to train and then take the women's training and then the game on the Saturday, game on the Sunday. Where's your free time?
Yeah.
Where's your free time to go and spend with your family and go and do stuff, your hobbies and passions? And now he's got the time, so maybe it's just a case of just enjoying. He's seen the other side now, and all that. This idea that he wants to get back into management and so on. I'm not sure I buy it. I mean, if it does go wrong, they've got someone there that can take the team on an interim basis. I think for now it's a case of just to try to play as long as possible. And I mean, you've seen what it's like. You're 30. You're going to be 39 in November. Just keep on going.
Yeah,
just keep on going and see how you get on. And I think for him, the main target is not about looking to get into management or stiff Stuart Kettlewell if things are going wrong. I think it's very much score goals and win the league.
Yeah. No, I think by and large they will very much do that.
And to help them do that, obviously Brian Graham is probably the most noteworthy signing. Another couple of good players, Shaughan. Talk to me about Lewis Reid, 21-year-old centre-back who's coming from Stranraer.
But probably similar in terms of an upward trajectory compared to went to Airdrie.
Craig Ross.
Yeah, similar to that in terms of the leap. But he might have been maybe the best defender in League 2 last season.
He's definitely, you just take one look at him and be like, look at this big brute.
Yeah, and I'm maybe the only surprise is that he's ended up in League 1. Like I think Ayr United were linked with him, and I imagine there was a couple of Championship clubs who fancied bringing him in over the summer. I would imagine kind of money talks though. Like we've seen in the past that Ross County can afford to push a boat out. I presume they've done that with him, but I think it'll be worthwhile if they have done so.
I thought he was really good at Stranraer. I mean, you take one look at him and the guy's class, and on top of that as well, not just being a big lad, he can play a bit of football. And I think Stranraer must have known from about September, October time that he's not going to be there next season, regardless of what division Stranraer are in. I think it's a really smart pickup by Ross County. And it's smart for not just you're getting a good player, but you're getting a hungry young guy who he's played full-time football at Queen's Park before. But I think that was just a bit part player. I'm not even sure if he ever played for the Spiders. But going to Ross County, you've got a great opportunity. If you do well there, then you can maybe even kick on even further. And it's not like the signing of Declan Gallagher, where you sign a guy who's very much on the way down, that's just looking for a payday, whose heart's not really going to be in it. You've got a guy there who can see this as a huge opportunity, both for him and for the football club. So he goes there and works hard at it. Who knows what might happen, but he's definitely the right kind of profile of player. Luke McCarville's maybe a bit similar, but I was surprised they'd have gone in for him. I can't imagine he's dreadfully expensive, but having seen Kelty Hearts, I think 3 of the 4 times last season, McCarville never really stood out.
No, of all the signings that they've made, he might be the one that is... Not that it doesn't make sense, because it does make sense, but I think in terms of the one that may struggle to make the most amount of positive impact, he might be the one. I don't necessarily think he'll be a starter.
No, I mean he's only 21, and there's a lot to learn, and I suppose that in that position, like on the wing, you've got like Adam Emsley and Richard Chin ahead of you, and I mean these guys are going to be expected to get through a hell of a lot of work. So he's going to be a player that can come on, and at the age of 21. Not a starter, but you sign guys that you can bring on and develop. It's just that I didn't see, like for Lewis Reed, for instance, very obvious. I think they're about the same age. Lewis Reed's very obviously going to be a good player and can be a good player in the right environment. McCarville was always like, oh right, okay, I'll be interested to see how well he does. I've no doubt that Lewis Strapp will be a very good signing for them.
Yeah, I think that is a really, really good signing for them. Like defensively, he's solid. I appreciate, like, for so long at like Morton and Airdrie, his long throw was very much a potent weapon as well. But ultimately, I just think he's a good defender as well.
Mm-hmm. I look forward to how opposition teams in League One now get used to watching him dry the ball and wind up.
Take 5 minutes to walk from the left to the right
and move players over into very specific part of the pitch before launching the ball. Yeah, it's quite easy to get overawed by the long throw, but I think he's just like fundamentally a good defender, and he'll work quite well. And that's something that I think County maybe struggled with a wee bit last season, was the fullback areas, and I think he's an upgrade in that position. Maybe not so much over on the right. I think they're playing at the moment. It's, down in the notes there,
Dylan Smith's
playing at right back at the moment, and I think that you've got an out and out left back playing on the left, but you've got like a right sided centre back playing on the right who's just going to defend. He's not going to give you the overlaps. I don't think he's going to give Chin will be playing wide on the right, won't he? So you're not going to give Chin the same degree of support, but maybe it's a lopsided team that he's going for. But I think that's an area that they might want to look at. The other area I think is well worth looking at is maybe some of the players that had left.
Yeah.
I think that guys like probably a couple of big departures. No point going over Declan Gallagher's departure again, because we did that when we talked about Airdrie. But Noah Chilvers leaving the club. There was a statement on the website after he moved on. Following ongoing discussions with Noah and his agent since the end of last season, it was clear Noah didn't want to play football in Scottish League One. Well, no one does. The grand scheme of things, no one wants to play football at this level. But he's the kind of player, and that spark and that creativity, I think he was badly missed last season. And it might be oversimplifying the point, because there was a lot of issues at County last time out, but if they had him available, he would have given them something that they didn't have, and they might have avoided relegation had it been for him.
But potentially. And as you say, I don't think there was any chance he was going to stick about for the third tier.
Yeah, aye.
Disappointed Iacovitis moved on, because he may be the angriest man in Scottish football. Would love to have seen him, maybe he will stick about. He's just not going to be at Ross County.
I'd hate to think there must be the clubs absolutely sweating, fans of clubs sweating that they might bring in Alex Iacovitis.
It's going to be Raith Rovers, isn't it?
It was against Rovers that he lost his mind against in the final day of the season.
Remember he had one. Remember they lost at Queen's Park, lost at Lesser Hampden, and there was a big Rammy at full time.
That's where it was.
And Iacovitis was heavily involved, and then there was another one at Starks Park as well on the last day.
Just a bit of laugh, mate.
Tremendous.
Calm down. You know, you say it's like football, when folk get relegated, they lose their jobs. So you can't laugh at these things. Well, there you go. You shouldn't laugh, that's not funny. In terms of their goalkeeper for the season ahead, they're going with Bradley Foster. Looks like he's going to be the number one. Signed from Wrexham in the summer of 2025, but barely kicked the ball last season because Ross Laidlaw and then Trevor Carson were ahead of him. So
don't know a lot about him.
He played the Challenge Cup last season, made one appearance coming off the bench, but relatively untested. So it'll be interesting to see. One player actually we didn't talk about, Ross Munro, and when we were talking about Cally Thistle, about the goalkeeper. He's going to step. He's too late now. I just popped in my head. We talked about an untested goalkeeper in a Highland team. We need to go back. Listen, stop recording. We'll go all the way back to Cally Thistle, dropping the bit about Ross Munro. But I think it's a kind of similar thing where it's a young guy that's stepping up, and not sure how he'll get on.
You would like to think it's like, even if he is inexperienced, you like to think this is a kind of decent place to learn and grow, because Ross County should be dominating games. They shouldn't have that much to do. And as you say, Munro is a good example of somebody who I was like, how is this going to go? But actually, it worked out fine. I actually think Munro got better as the season progressed. Whether he can continue that in the Championship, I don't know. But we'll see what Foster is made of this year.
It's great. I'm sure that the Ross County fans loved that. Just getting a wee bit of Cally Thistle chat there. This is their safe space, and we've infiltrated it with that absolute rubbish. Remember, there's one point in the season where it looked as though that County might have finished ninth, and Cally Thistle would have finished like second place, and if the pair of them meeting in the playoffs, that would have been good. That would have been good. Really enjoyed that. We're talking about the players. We're talking about the guys that have left. We're talking about the guys that they've brought in. Talking about the manager. Stuart Kettlewell, I'll be honest and say it was a surprise to me that he was allowed to continue at Ross County after that season. I use that term, used it in this podcast, I used it elsewhere. I spoke him a cultural reset where bringing in guys that have got connections to the club, it felt, I mean, it's a good thing knowing what it's like to live in the Highlands. Say like it's a bad thing. It must be class like living in the Highlands, like we fresh air, beautiful scenery, all that sort of stuff. But if you lived, if you're used to living in big cities and so on, that might be a bit extreme. And the fact it's much more remote than other parts of the country, it might put people off doing it. That's why there's the appeal to have Stuart Kettle there who knows what it's like to manage there. But, and this is a big but, it just felt a bit like a lack of imagination, felt a bit lazy.
It feels like Roy McGuigan never wants to cast his net particularly wide when it comes to like managers, and like the fact, as you say, like Don Cowie left the club and then has then come back into this weird, I don't even know entirely sure, is it kind of youth kind of coach type position? I presume that Kettlewell would have been away in the summer, and obviously McGregor has decided to stick by him. But then maybe we shouldn't be surprised because he'd done the exact same with Don Cowie when they got relegated from the top flight.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I don't think Kettlewell is a particularly good manager, but I think he has more than enough about him, and there's more than enough in the squad. He is good enough to get them back up at the first time of asking. Whether he can do anything over and above that, well, that's a question for a different day, I suppose.
I suppose the two things that he's done, the first one's win games and play well in those games as well. So that's a really good start to the season in terms of like winning the group stage for the League Cup as well. You know, to beat Ross County, I mean, beg your pardon, to draw with Dundee and then like beat them in penalties by now here and there, but the fact that you look really good against them and were maybe the better team against Dundee on a different day, you could have won it. There's a lot of positives to be taken from that, and then following that by Big Dog and Airdrie, and just like absolutely giving them a scalping that, and who are one of the teams who, if you were to place out all the league favourites, Airdrie might be close by to County in terms of like challenging them for the title. So to bounce them about this, like that must give you a good sense of satisfaction going forward into the competition. So he's done that. He's won games, and on top of that, he's changed his style. Like he has recognised himself that we need to be more attacking. We need to go out there and actually like we can't be reactive. We need to take games to the teams, do stuff that we didn't really do last season. Is he a good manager? I suppose that the times that he's gone in, the clubs he's gone into, Motherwell, he was good up to a point, and he deserves a lot of credit for some of the stuff that he did in terms of like helping develop Theo Bear and selling him on for a lot of money, because I think Theo Bear, a joke figure after his time at St Johnstone, where he rocked up at Fir Park, but that ended quite sourly, and particularly all the allegations about people like
how he was treated by the fans,
how he was treated by supporters, and there's a kind of story that really fell apart when it was put under a bit of scrutiny. It didn't really make much sense. And the time at Kilmarnock was just a shambles, just a real shambles. The wrong man at the wrong time, and was rightly moved on. And I think for him coming back to County, it feels like he's going back to, use the term again, a safe space for him, because he knows the club and knows the people behind the scenes, and knows what the expectations and what the ethos are for them.
Probably has to be this has to be a success for him.
Say that, man. Literally just about to say that.
Again, he will be a manager that will probably need to go into the background and become a youth coach or development manager or something.
I did that.
I mean, you've just got another job at Ross County 12 months down the line.
Listen, they'll promote Don Cowie to manager, and Stuart Kettlewell can take his job as the head of youth development. But you're right, he needs this to go to go really well. I don't know about Kettlewell. Maybe it might be similar to Paul Hartley, where you've managed other teams and you're kind of like burned by it a wee bit, so you're kind of just going back to somewhere where you're safe. And although that Cove Rangers are just like kind of circling the drain at the moment, you're quite happy to it. You enjoyed the job, and you're doing it. And this for Kettlewell, this is a good opportunity to prove to everyone you're a good manager. Take the team that you've got a bit of an affinity for back to the level where they belong, and won a trophy along the way.
And bear in mind that the kind of slop that Ross County fans have had to put up with for the last 2 years, it would be good if at last, for the first time in a long time, they can actually have something to enjoy and celebrate, or get relegated again, which would be even funnier.
Or get relegated again. I had something in. So basically, for the way it works for my notes, I've got a draft set of notes, and then basically redraft them into the main ones. And there was something for Ross County that I actually forgot to mention. It was Yeah, they had a season ticket announcement that was written by ChatGPT. Did you see this?
Aye,
And it said,
pathetic.
a season ticket isn't just access, it's your all access pass. Shut up. Shut up. Aye, so champions, that we're going for?
Yes, absolutely.
Aye, fair play. So if we're putting, we'll just have a quick run through the division then, Sean. So we can both agree that Ross County are going to be the champions. Who are we saying are finishing in second, third, and fourth?
Second, Hamilton. Third, East Kilbride. Fourth, Airdrie.
Okay. Ninth place,
East Fife.
relegated.
Cove Rangers.